should breed apathy. I sit on my ass all goddamn day. A misanthropic employed with nothing to say. What you must do all you can. Break all the fucking rules and go to hell with Superman and die like a champion. Yeah, hey!
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Soundcheck, the rock and roll and alternative music podcast here at Central Michigan Life. My co-hosts are wearing my t-shirts. It's a little awkward, but we'll work with it. I am joined. My name is Andrew Mullen.
Yeah.
I am joined by the ever so esteemed
Michael Livingston.
and our absolutely amazing podcast editor,
Ben Ackley.
And boys, today is the day.
It's the day.
It's the day. This was inevitable that this episode was going to happen one day. It's almost been like it's teased throughout the entire existence of this podcast. We are talking about the one, the only, punk rock legends, Bad Religion.
As if it wasn't obvious enough.
Yes, so we've decorated with all my Bad Religion merch because they are indeed my favorite band in the entire world. And I'm beyond giddy to talk about this.
Well, we can tell. You're visibly shaking.
Yeah. I'm not. Shut up. But yeah, so we're talking about Bad Religion. I am just super excited, like I said. So, yeah, before we go any further, though, before I just go off on just a million tangents, let's get some housekeeping out of the way first, Michael.
Hey, follow us on Twitter, at SCheckOfficial. Follow me on Twitter, at Michael C. Liv.
Very, very affirmative.
Yeah, do it. No balls.
Or, hey,
Big
you can just
mood.
do what you want. You can follow me at Andrew Mullen 4. Ben, where can people find you?
Nowhere.
Still hasn't changed. That's fine. Mm-hmm. All right. So, yeah, Bad Religion. They're a band.
Wow, great script you got
Great
here.
script.
You got like 8 pages of notes, and that's how you start off.
No, seriously. We haven't talked about a punk band, I don't think, in a long while either.
No,
so
very
we're
long
filling a lot of itches for me today, and this is gonna be a long one. We're gonna say that now. Probably gonna be a bit of a long one.
This is a multiple bathroom break episode.
Yeah,
For us
that's
and
the
you.
level. That's the level we're at. But yeah, kind of the idea I have for this episode is not only to just gush endlessly about this band. I don't want to just be that. I want to have some sort of educational or guide, format to it somehow. So my whole idea for this episode is that I organized this tier list together. All their entire discography into like a tier list that kind of would help guide someone who isn't as familiar with this band how to get into the Bad Religion and what order they should go in with their discography. Mm-hmm. That's how I've organized this. I'll get into that more in a second. But there's a lot to kind of talk about before we actually get into the albums themselves. And I kind of want to start off with us kind of chatting about our experiences with the band. Now, everyone already knows how I feel, so I want you two to start off with this. And this is the part I've been afraid of the most, the questions that I'm about to ask. Michael, Ben, what was your experience with the band Bad Religion before researching this episode? And after having listened to everything, what are your overall thoughts with this band? No pressure. But if you say anything negative about this band, I will throw you out this 4-story window.
Okay, great. I will start. My experience with Bad Religion was slim to none, but that doesn't mean I didn't enjoy them when I did first discover them, probably back in 2013, 2014, definitely beginning of high school, as I started to shift away from a metal phase into more of a grunge punk phase. And I discovered probably either American Jesus or something off of Stranger Than Fiction first. And I was blown away of how well I could pay attention to the song, follow the lyrics, sing along. I was blown away about how memorable it was and how it so easily gets stuck in my head, which a punk song can do very easily, but not necessarily in this sort of soaring chorus fashion. My punk and grunge phase was shorter than many other phases in my life. I gravitated more towards hardcore, Black Flag, Minor Threat, But I definitely did have my 90s phase. I absolutely loved Bad Religion's contemporaries as well. Had a huge Offspring phase. I listened to some NoFX. Just kind of that whole valley skate punk, surf punk sort of vibe. But it was a very short-lived phase in my life. Now that I've come back, and I met you, Andrew, freshman year, and you tell me right away your favorite band is Bad Religion. I'm like, oh sure, I know them, but like, that is such like an out there pick, right? I could not have expected that if you were not wearing like 3 different pieces of Bad Religion merch at the time. So, there was that, and then lo and behold, that summer after we do our first couple seasons of Soundcheck together, we go and see them live, which was freaking amazing. I mean, I've never been so close to a band because we were right in the front row.
Yeah.
And
I made sure that happened.
Oh yeah, we got there early. We were right up front. We were right in front of Jay. I remember we were right in front of Jay, and I was scared because I'm like, a punk band in the front row. This is giving me like Dinosaur Jr. flashbacks where I like almost had my head exploded from the loudness. But that show was like so beautifully mixed. Like even in the front row, everything cut through, and it was just like I could still sing along. I could hear what Greg was saying. I could hear the bass and how punchy it was. It was like probably the most impressed I've ever been with like a live mixing. And now we're here. At present day, I've listened to nearly every Bad Religion album, and at the end of the day, it's a positive, but I have so many questions for you, Andrew. Just like, not necessarily like, why do you think this is good or anything like that, but just like, Bad Religion is so different from any band I've ever listened to before, and the way that they prioritize what they want in their albums.
Yeah.
Pretty much all the artists I listen to really prioritize experimentation and changing from album to album, trying to have each project have its own identity. Bad Religion doesn't do that per se. They still like accomplish those goals, but they really have their sound, and there's a consistency to it that I've never heard from any band before. And I think that should be our main goal today if we're to like organize this episode into like a thesis paper. Is it okay to be this consistent? Is it right? Ben kind of said like the AC/DC syndrome.
Yeah.
Is that okay?
Yeah.
But
I definitely do have something to say to that later.
Yeah.
But I want to hear what Ben has to say.
I mean, even less experienced than Michael, as it's probably known. I was like I've been into older music like my whole life. Like when I was in high school, I was listening to stuff from the 60s primarily. So I knew of Bad Religion by name only. Then I got here and I heard some stuff through Andrew, but I still sort of just had like a passing familiarity. After this episode, I know more, but I'm still not totally there. I mean, but in listening to all this stuff, I totally get why you like all this stuff. Like there's no question. It's not like, it's not like I'm listening to Korn or anything. It's like, I totally understand, like, all the elements are here. There's the political stuff. It sounds like they're having fun. Like, the melody's there. Everything's super catchy. Like, it just totally makes sense to me.
Yeah. Yeah, I was actually really interested, because I wasn't kind of going off with you, Ben, because I don't ever really hear you talk much about 90s punk music, and obviously Bad Religion was there at the start of the 80s, but,
Right.
Many people do kind of consider them more in the 90s punk vein. They kind of help kickstart that whole scene, that whole, like, next generation of punk, in the 90s. So I wasn't really sure, like, how where your opinions laid on that era of punk music, and
Right.
how would you even really react to their stuff,
Yeah. It really just depends on the artist and the album for me. Like, the big reason that I gravitate towards late 70s, early 80s punk music is the songwriting and the vocalists and all that stuff, but also just the way it's recorded.
Yeah.
Like, it's really, really bare bones.
Yeah, I know you really like that lo-fi stuff.
Right. So when stuff starts getting shiny and squeaky produced, then it can turn me off a little bit, but, like, everything here, like, I totally get it. Like the vocals aren't pop punky or anything that would turn me off. Like the melodies are there. I mean, everything's still there. It's just more streamlined in terms of like being catchy, honestly.
Yeah.
The verses feel like an integral part of the song.
Can we reverse this question to you now, Andrew?
Yes, I would love to. So I won't go on a huge diatribe, but I probably will. So you mentioned, Michael, kind of at the start, Bad Religion kind of being an out there pick, sort of, for someone's favorite band. And, and that's not lost to me. Why Bad Religion? Why is this the band that I've been just obsessed with for a long, long time? And, as I kind of look back onto when I was getting into Bad Religion, I think one of the biggest reasons why is that they came into my life at pretty much the exact right time. Like you, Michael, I first heard of Bad Religion when I was, early on in high school. When I got into music kind of in 8th grade, that's kind of when I was really started becoming a music fan. And early on, I could tell I liked things that were loud, that were fast, maybe even aggressive. But punk music took me not a huge time, but it took me a little bit to really kind of get it. And I know a lot of bands from this time. I'm sure plenty of the members of Bad Religion had this experience with the Ramones. It's what's when you go into those early generations of punk fans. It's like the Ramones, like, oh, they changed my life. That first record changed my life. I didn't have that really with the Ramones. I remember I kind of liked Blitzkrieg Bop, but it was actually kind of that lo-fi production I know you really liked, Ben, that kind of turned me off at first. I was like, I don't get this. Like the singer just sounds a little goofy, weird. Which I know is all sacrilege for a punk fan to say. And I love the Ramones now, of course. But, at first I was like, I don't really get this. However, by freshman year of high school, I was already listening to pop punk and I guess what I thought was emo at the time. So I was really into Green Day. I was really into Fall Out Boy. Those were two of my favorite bands at the time. As embarrassing as to say about Fall Out Boy. But, I still like Green Day. So, I don't remember how I first heard about them. I don't have an exact pinpoint in my memory where I was like, where I discovered.
I find that's rarely the case with your favorite artists. Like you get so wrapped up in their material. It's like, how can you pinpoint the first time you heard I don't remember the first time I heard a Dinosaur Jr. song. I'm sure you don't remember the first time you heard Bob Dylan.
No fucking way. No.
But anyway, sorry, go ahead.
Eventually we'll have to do a Bob Religion.
Bob Religion. Yeah, only Bob Dylan's religious material.
Well, that'd be an achievable way to get through his discography. That's 3 albums.
Go ahead.
We'll eventually have to do a Bob Dylan episode one day, just to complete the trifecta. They already did Dino. But anyways. But no, yeah. But I don't remember when I first discovered them, but I do remember I bought the song You from No Control off of the song You from the album No Control, and the Against the Grain version of 21st Century Digital Boy on iTunes. Remember when you could buy songs off the iTunes store?
Oh yeah.
Only 2013 kids would know that. Although Spotify was already a thing well by then, so I don't know what I was still doing buying songs off of iTunes. But nevertheless, I don't know. The name kind of stuck out to me a bit. I heard a lot of people talk about them, and the album art looked cool. I was like, all right, I'll give this a go. So I bought them on there and didn't think much of it. And then it was, again, probably some the middle or later on in freshman year of high school for me. At like lunchtime, they sent us all, they feed us the slock they fed us in the cafeteria. And then you could either sit in the tables and chat with friends. I didn't have a lot of them in high school, so I used to just go out wandering the hallways or just kind of resting against the wall, just doing something. I had this spot that I liked to stay in the hall. I probably could find it again if I was there. And I just had my music on shuffle, and the song You came on, and something clicked there. I had that magical moment like so many people had with the Ramones, with Bad Religion. That's kind of, I think, where I really started to get into actual punk music.
It's almost like Bad Religion reached out and said, you will be our super fan.
Yes. I was hand selected. Oh my goodness. But yeah, no, something, and what clicked with me then, I couldn't honestly articulate at that point. But Ben, if you don't mind playing a clip, a little bit of You, and then I think I can kind of explain further why I think why I was really drawn to them at that point.
most beautiful place in the whole fucking world. It's made of candy canes and planes and bright red choo-choo trains and the meanest little boys, most innocent little girls. And you know, I wish that I could go there. It's a road that I have not found, and I wish you the best of luck, dear. Drop a car or letter on my side of town, 'cause there's no time for fussing and fighting, my friend. But baby, I'm amazed at the hate that you could send, and you've been in my entire world. But I don't have the turpentine to clean what you have soiled, and I won't forget it. There's a place where
And for any astute listeners, yes, that was a Beatles reference in the pre-chorus, so we can work it out. So, but anyways, yeah, what I realized is that it's the melody. It was that melody mixed with those really aggressive, just pummeling guitars and rhythms, and I think somewhere in the back of again, I couldn't articulate any of this at the time. I was still a very baby, music fan. So, but I think somewhere in the back of my head was like, yes, this is what I want to hear. This is what I want to hear from punk music. And thankfully, it was them that also cured me of my Fall Out Boy fandom and all that stuff, and I finally got away from all that crap. And yeah, I think that was definitely one half of it. It was the melody. I love melody. I love hooks. That's where that's my favorite. That's one of my favorite aspects of music. So that I really appreciated. It's the other half of that were the lyrics. By come time sophomore year, I was never really that religious. But I certainly was questioning things at that point, and I was really starting to look at how religion affected society and all the problems it causes. By the way,
look at where we grew up too. Andrew and I are from the kind of the same area,
yeah,
like
it's a very
southeast suburbs,
conservative,
white,
area of the state. And by the way, I should say right now, I will probably talk about political and societal and religious topics in this episode.
The band's called Bad Religion.
Yeah, I can't avoid it. I just can't. Whether I agree with it or not, I couldn't avoid it. So,
Anyway.
But anyways, that's just an aside. But yeah, so I was starting to question that stuff, maybe because of Bad Religion slightly. That in like really cringy YouTube atheist culture at the time that I do not want to get into this at all. But thankfully, I'm no longer pay attention to. But it was that, and also by the time 2015 came around, because of how great our country is, presidential elections for 2016 started at that point, and I was becoming more politically aware. And obviously, looking at the topics that Bad Religion sings about, it's all about society, politics, religion, science.
Right.
They touch all that stuff. That was like, okay, now I feel like I have something that kind of is helping articulate a lot of the stuff that I'm thinking, a lot of the stuff that I'm feeling, and also still being really catchy, really accessible, and kind of simple in a musical sense, but really, articulate and kind of well thought out in the lyrical sense. And I appreciated that so much, and to this day I still do. And unlike a lot of those other contemporaries like NoFX, I honestly, the more I grow up, the more I like NoFX. The less I like NoFX. They've become juvenile. They're like Bad Religion's weird juvenile, like younger sibling that no one wants to think about. I don't really care for NoFX as much as I did back in high school. But Bad Religion's still there because I still think they should, even from like very early on in their career, they should have a level of maturity that I really appreciate for a punk band. So, kind of all that tied together is why I think I was drawn to them so much as a high schooler, and why they're still with me today.
So it's just sort of, not to diminish it, but it was really a factor of like right place, right time, along with the fact that they're a great band.
Yeah, absolutely. And listen, there's so many other reasons. I can get to the actual music itself in a second and why I think they're so good. Yeah, because they are a great band, but you're right. I don't think it diminishes it. They came in my life at the right moment, and really, yeah, they just stuck with me since. Obviously, other bands, like, Pennywise and Jello Biafra and the Dead Kennedys, they also helped fill those niches for me at the time. But it was really Bad Religion that was the catalyst for everything, I think.
Yeah, I mean, going off of what Ben said, and not to kind of compare you to everyone else, but like a lot of people have similar stories where like they hear a band and they think, this is the soundtrack to my life right now. And, Bad Religion is one of those bands. After I've listened to them and understood the lyrics a little more, it doesn't really matter what age you are, as long as you are somewhat politically aware, somewhat have a kind of this self-motivation, which I know you have, Andrew. You're very self-motivated. So like you can pick that up at any age and kind of carry it with you. No matter where you go.
And I think that's a really good point. I won't dive too much in the lyrics right this second, but when, looking at something like Jello Biafra, when you look at all the stuff he writes, his stuff, while very well written, a lot of times they reference very specific political events and they kind of age awkwardly in that sense, even if like the points it makes are really good and you can tie it to like current issues. It kind of stays where they're at. With Bad Religion, like you said, they're so well written and so well thought out. And not only that, like the political arguments they can make, they're not really tied to anything specific like that usually. So they just age. They're just timeless punk songs. And there's not, that's what always, I think that's what really, has really kept them with me for so long. Music just doesn't age to me for the most part. So.
Yeah, that makes sense.
What's next on our list? Are you gonna kind of give us some history of the band?
Yeah, but I just wanted to. Do you have any questions? You guys kind of wanted to move on before we get into the band specific?
Not really. I have a lot of questions about the band's formation, which I'd like to ask. But you kind of went through and kind of answered how this band came to you at a right time, right place in your life. How where we grew up kind of plays into it, and also just like. It makes sense for your personality, dude. Yeah. Like, after knowing you for nearly 4 years, it just makes sense.
Honestly, though, I think this band is it sounds cheesy as hell, but I think this band helped formulate a lot of my personality and a lot of who I am. So
I do have a question, and we should keep going when I leave the room, but does anyone else want a popsicle? Because I'm going to go grab one.
I'll take a popsicle.
Andrew?
Maybe later.
Okay. I'll be right back. y'all keep going. I'll be right back.
Tell us about the history of this band.
So let's I'm just gonna over through their formation a bit, and showing other aspects of their early career. I'll go and kind of generally explain what this band sounds like and kind of what they're all about. I won't go into like the band's full history. I'll kind of do that throughout when we talk about their albums later. But to start off with, they were formed in 1980. I've also seen the year 1979. It's been conflicted, but I believe the band members said 1980, so that's when they formed. Your core members, well, at the very start, your core members that pretty much for the most part, has been with the band throughout its entire history. Greg Graffin on vocals, the only consistent member, my punk rock professor dad, weirdo hero that I love so much. He's a very unassuming man. Probably one of the more unassuming punk vocalists you'll hear, but I love him for that. I think what he brings in terms of vocals, it makes it very accessible to sing along with. I sing along with Bad Religion in the car so much, or at home, so I've always appreciated how accessible it is to kind of sing their stuff. Brett Gurewitz on guitars, he and Greg Graffin are kind of like the two primary songwriters. So I'll get to that dynamic in a second. But he was kind of there for the band's first 4 years and then kind of came during their golden period from like the late 80s to the mid 90s. Mm-hmm. He left for a bit when Bad Religion moved to Atlantic Records, and then came back 2001 and kind of been with them since. I'll get to all that stuff later. But he and Greg Graffin are like the two like main figureheads because they write all the songs. Brett Gurewitz also, I forgot to put in my notes, also founded Epitaph Records, which is where Bad Religion's released not only most of their albums through, but has signed such great artists like Pennywise and Rancid
and the Offspring.
Mm-hmm. And Falling in Reverse, which is quite literally my least favorite band of all time. So yes, Epitaph has housed not only my favorite band ever, but my least favorite band. So I'm very mixed on the work that Epitaph has put out. But But yeah, so that's kind of that's gonna be an important thing to note for later. Jay Bentley on bass. He actually didn't really know how to play anything.
I know.
But like Jay, I think Greg and Gruitz, and maybe their drummer at the time, was like, well, we need a bassist, and Jay was like one of the only other punk rock dudes they knew, so it was like, hey, you could be in the
bassist.
Yeah, classic bass.
I was gonna say
easiest instrument. We'll teach him in like 10 minutes.
Yeah. But yeah, he was there for the first 2 years and then kind of left for a bit, then came back after the fall of their second record, which you'll hear. You should hear me reference quite a bit throughout this episode. He came back in '86 and has been with the band since. Later on, Greg Heston in '84 joined when Brett left for the first time, and but stayed with them even when Brett came back up until 2013. Brian Baker later on would replace Brett when Brett came back replaced Brett when Brett left for the second time, and yeah.
You're starting to get how complicated this is. I think what people should know is Gavin is the only truly consistent member.
Yeah. And they've had a lot of great guitarists. Greg Heston, I forgot to mention, former guitarist for the Circle Jerks, also for the band Punk Rock Karaoke, which is a really fun thing you should look up sometime. Brian Baker was formerly of Minor Threat, and I forget the other band.
Dag Nasty, dude.
Oh, he was in Dag. That's right. That was the other one, Dag Nasty. So, yeah, there's some pedigree for you right there. And the drummer, they've always kind of sucked through drummers, but the one solidly consistent drummer they've had throughout their career was Brooks Wackerman, who came in the early 2000s and is amazing. We'll get to him when we get to his material. Yes. So that's your kind of, throughout your history, that's kind of the members you'll be hearing about.
I have a question.
Yeah, go ahead.
You didn't mention that they, Gaffin and Brett met in high school. Yeah. And it's like kind of classic story of like the weird kids coming together in high school and forming this band and like feeling like the outcasts. I want to ask, do you think bands like that have such like a long history going back? Because when you listen to any interview, my favorite thing they say is like, when you're in Bad Religion, you don't break up. You know what I mean? Yeah. So do you feel like that long history has held them together, so closely?
Possibly. It's that is such a good thing to mention because talking about the longevity of Bad Religion, there really isn't another, because there isn't really another punk band like them. You can't. I mean, NoFX and Pennywise have been around for a while, but not quite as long. The Descendants, they've been on and off together for a long time. Whenever you think about these classic, late 70s, early 80s punk groups, they'll break up, they'll have their down period, and they'll just fizzle out. Bad Religion never really had that. I mean, band members have left, and come back, but no, there's never really been apart from maybe after the second record, there really hasn't ever been a full breakup. Right. And I don't really know what to attest that to. I think possibly the history of, meeting as outcasts in high school, Jay, Brett, and Greg helped for sure. But, and I don't know. It's so interesting because I mentioned the Descendants, because Greg famously, went to college, got a PhD, became a professor, for Christ's sakes. I want to say UCLA, in evolutionary biology. And Milo famously went to college. There's a whole album called that.
Milo did, in fact, go to college.
And that band, and that drove like a pretty big wedge in the band, from my understanding. So what Bad Religion did different, I don't know. I think, I don't know, maybe it was the songwriting dynamics, maybe again it was the long friendships they had. I think they've certainly made good choices over the years in how they kind of divvy up roles and responsibilities that kind of helped keep tensions relatively low.
Well, I think that something else that kind of relates to what we were talking about thesis statement wise almost is like, you have to imagine the stakes in a band like Bad Religion aren't as high as the stakes in like Led Zeppelin or something, where it's like we have to keep innovating and like changing and doing all this shit and like we're on the cutting edge. It's like we're just a punk band, like we have our messages, we want to write good songs,
Yeah.
But that's it. Like AC/DC, for better or worse, has sort of had a changing cast, but they've been together for a really long time as well.
Mm-hmm.
And they're not trying to reinvent the wheel when they make their albums. So, like, the Ramones had a really long career, too. So there's something to be said for not changing so drastically with every album that could keep a band together.
I wish I could be a fly on the wall in their studio sessions, because you always hear horror stories about like bands fighting in the studio. I can't imagine it's to that degree with Bad Religion. I mean, they've made like almost 20 albums, so it's like they gotta like what they do in the studio and like each other.
And you know what? I'll just skip ahead to talking about the songwriting dynamic too, because I think it was very early on in the band's career. I think their first 5 songs they wrote, like Greg Raffin wrote a couple, like 2 or 3, and then Brett did the same. They kind of came together. It's like, oh, we have some songs now. Cool. Like that's pretty much been the dynamic for the most part throughout the year. I mean, other band members have chimed in with certain, they're credited on some songs. Other band members have written songs by themselves, but pretty much by and large throughout the entire band's history, again, except when Brett was gone in the late 90s, it was always Brett wrote some songs, Greg wrote some songs, they'd come together, maybe they would help each other like finish certain aspects of it, and that's kind of what the songwriting dynamic was. And Scout's Honor is the only time I'm going to compare him to the Beatles, because it is accurate, and because it's not, and I'm not the only one to say this, because Graffin and Gruwitz have often been labeled as the Lennon-McCartney of punk rock, and I really do, and just based on what they've talked about with the songwriting process, I really do compare it to early Beatles material. Like, you can't really tell the difference between a Gruwitz song and a Graffin song. You have to really nitpick to find that stuff, but like the early Beatles, you can't really tell apart a McCartney song from a Lennon song early on. I mean, obviously it gets clearer and clearer as it goes on through the history, and of course they usually would sing the songs they wrote, so that was a little different too. But generally, I mean, like during the Beatles' pop rock, phase, their early career, their boy band phase per se, that's kind of what the dynamic was there. They weren't trying to reinvent the wheel. They were just writing pop songs for a long time. And that's kind of what Bad Religion's done, but for their whole career. And I think, consistency, you keep mentioning consistency. And, I'll kind of get to their sound later, but, and I think this applies to Ramones. And in fact, it does, because when I wrote this article for CM Life back in my freshman year, my first cover story, it was about this bar in town. It was called The Foolery then. Now it's called Rebels. And it was kind of about the bar's history, because they had bands play like Black Flag and Soul Asylum and the Flaming Lips. They all kind of came in, and I talked to this old librarian that used to work here on campus. He was like retired at this point, but like I found his CMish email, so I had him like come in, and we sat down, we talked for a bit, and he was kind of a punk fan, so we were chatting about music for a bit, and then he brought up the Ramones, and he said this quote that I always I've carried with me to this day, and I really do apply this to Bad Religion. He said he was talking to a friend one time, and his friend's like, "Oh, you like the Ramones? Why do you like him? They only have one song," kind of talking about how all their stuff sounds similar. And like the professor said, yeah, but I really like that one song. And that's kind of how I feel about Bad Religion. They will change up structures every now and again. There will be differences in like production as well from album to album, by and large. But by the time you get to Suffer and onwards, you know what you're getting with this band. And I love them for that. I don't need anything else from this band. As long as they keep writing very consistent material, like you said, Ben, I'm fine that they don't really innovate that much. And I know, Michael, for someone like you always look for that innovation, for that experimentation. And I do too. Obviously, I always appreciate when a band does that. But there are also a lot of cases where I know what I like, I know I want to hear, and with Bad Religion, that's what I get.
Yeah. Like I said, that's going to be the main point of discussion, I feel like, for this episode.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, Bad Religion has their checklist, as I said earlier in the episode. I have a question for you. Moving on to like kind of their sound, Brett and Greg both share this love for not only like punk music and hardcore punk, but also pop and kind of just catchy music in general. Brett even said his second most favorite band is the Beach Boys.
That was actually Gruwitz.
Sorry, Brett.
Gruwitz. Yeah, I know.
Does that offend you at all?
I'm sure that's going to get Ben smirking at me. I knew he would. I knew he'd feel vindicated. And you know what? Hey, you know what? If it means I got Bad Religion the way that it is, I'm fine with him saying that the Beach Boys is the second favorite band. But yeah, you're right. They have a really interesting set of influences. I mean, yeah, you have your classic punk bands. I'm sure they've cited the Ramones as influences, the Clash, the Germs as well. The Adolescents, definitely. That one's important because the Adolescents were kind of beat them to doing the three-part harmonies that
Right.
the band became famous for. So they were kind of doing that first. And if you go back and listen to the Adolescents' first record, you can definitely hear that. But they've also cited the Beatles. I know Brett, that's his favorite band. They drop Beatles references every now and again in their material. So that's a big influence on them. But I know they also cited new wave acts as well. Jay, I think one of not his favorite artists is Elvis Costello, and I know I couldn't find the interview, but I swear I've heard Gurewitz say that he was listening to a lot of B-52s around the time the band formed. And if you go back and listen to something like Private Idaho, and I'm sure I mentioned this in our B-52s episode, which you should definitely go back and listen to. You could hear those three-part harmonies, those oohs and ahs kind of things that you'd be hearing with the band on something again like Private Idaho. So I think they definitely you can definitely hear their and influences on their sleeves. You know, Greg also is really into country and folk music, and he's even said one of his early favorites was kind of more obscure pop music, like Todd Rundgren. That's something Greg could listen to a lot too. In fact, I even think Todd Rundgren either produced one of their records at one point, or he helped him in some way. I forget what the exact circumstances were, but you're right. They do have some influences, Michael, you wouldn't expect them to have.
Shit.
What is our next talking point here?
So
Because we kind of talked about formation, a little bit of sound, songwriting.
So the sound. So those are some of the influences they have, and what does this band sound like if you haven't really heard them before, which I would have hoped if you're at least kind of a punk fan, you would have heard at least one song from them. But
Well, they heard one earlier.
Huh?
They heard one earlier.
Oh yeah, we started the episode off with "Do What You Want." So from the off point, you can already tell that they're a very energetic punk rock band. Some people call them melodic hardcore. I don't really agree with that. I think melodic punk is perfectly fine. I don't think they quite hit the aggression of hardcore, but they definitely have a lot of pummeling rhythms mixed with those melodic sensibilities that I mentioned earlier. And how they get melody? Well, they're really good at writing hooks. I think you kind of said before I don't know either it's before we started or not. I don't remember, Ben, but you mentioned that they're really good using verses, and they really make every part of the song mean something when it comes to the hook and catchiness of a song.
Yeah,
and I think that's a great way of putting it. Lots of three-way harmonies. That's three-part harmonies, however you put it. That is kind of one of their big trademarks, and they achieve that through their trademark oohs and ahs, as people like to say. Right. You get to go, it's kind of in the back of a lot of their stuff, and it really just makes everything stand out. As a punk band, you're not doing anything drastically different than a lot of other stuff, even around the time of the 80s. But there was enough for them to kind of stand out, even after the 90s, because they really inspired a whole new generation of punk fans. I mean, with their album Suffer, 1988, which we'll get to in a second, that just blew a lot of fans away. And, just the whole 90s scene might have looked different if Bad Religion wasn't around then.
There's that famous Fat Mike quote. He said, "Suffer changed everything."
Yeah, yes, exactly. And, and speaking of Fat Mike, NoFX have cited them as influences. Pennywise certainly has. Creator, which we talked about in our thrash metal episode, they've cited them as influences. Yeah, they actually even covered the song "You Are the Government."
Interesting.
Fine, but yeah, I mean, you can definitely hear it with their use of melody in their later material. So it makes sense to me. Obviously, the Offspring, I've cited them as influences. Lagwagon, Authority Zero, AFI, not good. So not all the people they've influenced are good. But one that I think you can hear the most influence in, Michael, you're gonna hate this, is Rise Against. I know they're not one that you particularly enjoy.
I'm
Michael.
fine with Rise Against. They have joined them on tour on multiple occasions, right?
I'm pretty sure, yeah. So I know you said you hated Rise Against, so I wasn't sure how you felt about that, but
No, I hate Avenged Sevenfold. not Rise Against.
Okay.
Yeah.
Very different bands, but okay. But no, okay, yeah, but I really like Rise Against, and you can definitely Rise Against definitely kind of falls under that melodic hardcore sound that I think definitely was drawn from something like Bad Religion. So I do have to ask, kind of considering all their influences and their use of melody, the use of these harmonies, what did you guys think of this sound? I mean, how do you think something like this works when applied to like punk music?
Me go first. Also, pardon any sounds you just heard. I'm doing my job.
You fixed my
engineering
microphone for
but
the listeners.
It just works. Like, I think that it's the cleanest punk vocal I've ever heard that I've really liked. Like, when I listen to punk music, I really gravitate towards poor singers.
Right.
What?
Sorry, nothing. Just Andrew drinking giant jug of lemonade just got me going. But go ahead.
I mean, like the vocals aren't crazy in any way, but it doesn't matter to me at all because the melody is totally there and the harmonies are there, and
Well, yeah, from a songwriting standpoint, like you write your own songs, Ben, so like I can see how something so simplistic as just like verse, chorus, verse, but also just like being really creative with how you get the listener to sing along.
Yeah, I feel the way about Bad Religion as related to punk as I do about like Fountains of Wayne with power pop. It's like it's just really good example of punk songwriting, which I really it's just over and over again enjoyable, and I like their one song, I would say.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I certainly, if we're going to kind of do an overview of the discography, I feel Bad Religion gets more versatile than someone may think. I've come to really enjoy when, in guitar riffs, when they stray away slightly from bar chords and take on a slightly dissonant sound. The greatest example of that is the intro to Suffer. I love songs like that, and there's a good collection of them on Against the Grain, which we'll get to later, that I really have come to enjoy. I don't get that as much in their later material, unfortunately.
That's interesting. Yeah,
that's what I come to like about Bad Religion.
I'm really interested to hear what you think about kind of how they make their later material sound. But before we get going, I forgot. I do want to have Ben play the song Sinister Rouge, because it opens right up with those trademark oohs and ahs, and I kind of want to have everyone just as an example of how they incorporate that into their sound.
Yes.
So not only did you hear like the kind of at the start of the song, kind of like this, sometimes they will put those like at the forefront as like the main focus, when it comes to the melody. But sometimes Greg will be singing the chorus, and you kind of hear it goes kind of in the background. They'll kind of really blend everything together, and it works so well. Like they really make the backing vocals almost like their own instruments at times.
Absolutely. I like I said, and that particular one too is an example of what I'm talking about with the guitars, where they can, most of the songs can be very standard bar chord rock, but like you can tell they're not, their skill level is beyond beginner.
And I didn't mention when I was talking about the band members, but especially,
don't mind me.
Don't play that again. When you hear the Heston and Gerbet's are pretty decent guitarists for punk music. They're not like amazing, but they do have nice interplays every now and again, especially on songs like Part 3 and What Can You Do? You can really hear some interesting solos and like interplays between the two. So you're right. I think a lot of their music can be boiled down to basic bar chords and whatnot, but I agree there are some little eccentricities that kind of help them stand out.
Yeah. So we've talked a lot about sound and songwriting, the lyrical content is huge, right?
Huge. This is one of the big things of the band. And, early on, when they were, I said earlier they were really mature for their age. And, I mean, that's true. I mean, they formed when they were really young. I mean, they were high schoolers. I think Greg was only like 15 when he joined Bad Religion. Or he was stupid young. And,
Wow.
They were from the Valley of Southern California. I'm not going to pretend to know LA geography, but they, it wasn't like where all the cool punk rockers were,
Right. I had a question about that too, because like when we think about West Coast punk and the LA scene, a lot of the hardcore, like Black Flag and stuff like that came from Hollywood and kind of that kind of area. But the Valley was different. It's kind of the home of the surfers and skater scenes of like the late 80s, early 90s. That's where kind of Tony Hawk made his huge appearance and rise to popularity there. I mean, so many skate parks out there are dedicated to him. But all the other regions around LA, again, I'm not a specialist in LA geography, kind of look down on the Valley as like, oh, those are the skaters and the surfers, the losers, and like, how do you think that impacted their sounds, if anything?
I don't know if it... I don't know if it impacted their sound apart from them like just being total dorks and geeks and nerds, which I love, and I'll get to that in a second. But in terms, I think in punk in general, I think having a band like Bad Religion come from the Valley probably opened the door for a lot of the skaters and the surfers and those people living in that area come forward in the 90s. I mean, like skate punk is kind of like a 90s term. And, I think that largely came from Bad Religion. And I'm not an expert in geography, but I imagine being from the Valley probably opened the door for that stuff.
For sure. Lyrics. We were going to touch on that. Sorry.
Yeah. Okay, good. So the reason I kind of mentioned they were mature for their age is because they were really into philosophy. They're really into science. They're really into old, plays and whatnot. That's kind of their thing. You can hear that so much throughout their material. Which is kind of plays into how the band got their name. They were kind of sitting around at one point. They were throwing off horrible, disgusting names. I think,
such as vaginal discharge.
Yes, that was one. Head cheese was another. Which I'm very happy that I don't. I'm very happy that I don't have to say my favorite band's name is Head Cheese.
Yep.
I dodged a bullet there. Bad parental planning, I think, was also one they threw out.
I think the consensus was they just wanted a name that started with bad at first, and then you'll explain this better. This particular area was the rise of TV and evangelicals.
The TV evangelicals, the moral majority was here. I mean, they formed in 1980. That was the year. That was the 1980 presidential election. Obviously, next year Reagan took power, and then of course, so all of this was kind of weighing on the cultural consciousness, especially for these kids who were pretty progressive, for their age at in the early 80s. I think I'm not gonna pretend like I've read the entire thing, but I have read a little bit of the book they recently put out, Do What You Want, which I actually have up there, and there was a really nice moment of self-awareness in that book where I think Greg was quoted saying, I mean, us four white kids growing up in the Valley, did we really have a lot to be angry about in 1980? I'll leave that for other people to decide, but we were. And you can definitely, even if it didn't personally affect them, they were definitely putting a lot of stuff related to the rise of the moral majority and, the religious right at the time. And, you really so they really wanted to speak against that. So, and, because they actually kind of wanted to say something with their name, that's why Bad Religion eventually came to be. And, wasn't, and which I do want to comment on real quick because, everyone thinks, oh, these are just a bunch of raging atheists kind of playing in this band. No, in fact, I don't think any of the members really identify as atheists or maybe even agnostic. I could be wrong. Greg Graffin himself actually considers himself a naturalist, which I'm not going to pretend like I know what that means.
Right.
But
well, there's an interview where they say Bad Religion is not anti-Christian. He kind of explained it really strangely. It's just not here, basically. You're not going to find it here.
It's just something we don't practice, something we don't really believe in. And, considering, and going to the logo, 'cause eventually they came up with the classic Crossbuster logo kind of thing, which I love so much. But it's such a great logo. Not only is it simple and it's offensive to a lot of people, it's offensive but still makes a point. It still makes a statement saying religion, again, it's not meant to be like a direct attack on Christianity. It's saying religion is, we don't like religion. We don't like things for people have to follow, and not question it. I think, I want to say either Brett or Jay in one interview said, anything can kind of be a bad religion as long as someone follows it and doesn't question it. That's kind of their mindset with the name and with the logo. And, it's a really interesting stance that they have, and I've always kind of appreciated it. I don't know, like, what do you guys kind of think of the name and their logo and kind of how they approached, the idea of what they wanted the band to be?
Honestly, I think Bad Religion is a pretty fabulous name. Because I've never even once thought of dissecting it at all. Like, it's just Bad Religion. Like, it's really simple. It's really memorable, and their iconography is great too. Like, that's a really good comparison with the Ramones, actually. Like, you think of the Ramones, you think of their logo, you think of their just big name. That's exactly what I think of with Bad Religion. They have their font, they have their logo. It's just like, it's clearly, I don't know how planned it was per se, but everything seems to have fallen into place for them to just have like really iconic imagery. I think
the name and the logo served as sort of a blueprint for what they would come up with later, and I think they talked about that in an interview where they sort of grew into the name. Mm-hmm. It was picked at first just out of like kind of this teenage angst and this wanting to disobey their parents and have something that offends. But eventually, as they became more conscious and grew more into their political ideologies, the name served them more.
Yeah.
And they sort of grew into this, and that shows in their lyrics as well.
And that's what I love about it, because, teen angst, a lot of times you think, like, I'm not going to do my chores, Mom, like, kind of thing. I don't like that. It just doesn't do that never did anything for me. It's like, okay, you're just kind of being a brat. Like, I don't really understand that. I like teen angst that's actually that actually wants to accomplish something. Like, I see, like, the older generation screwed up. I see this differently. We need to change that. And, like, teen angst for force of good, that's what I really appreciate. And then I really like, even early on when it was kind of to be like, we want to piss our parents off kind of thing, there was still some purpose to it. And it did evolve as the band went on, which I've always appreciated.
Yeah.
Anything else on lyrical discussions?
Just kind of talking about themselves. Obviously, like I said, they talk a lot about politics, society, science, religion, philosophy, history, media, old plays and books, and they'll reference a lot of this stuff in there.
Right.
And, it's so interesting to hear that kind of stuff in punk music. Their targets over the years, they've railed against the religious right. We mentioned class injustice, environmental destruction, war, racism, pro-life politics, political campaigning, and just so many other things I can't even think of off the top of my head. And Greg has often said when he writes lyrics, he kind of like, there's like an intellectual puzzle that he's like trying to solve in his head,
right.
And he'll write the lyrics to try to figure that out. And you can definitely hear that on certain songs, especially off of album like No Control.
Can I say the coolest thing I think about Bad Religion's lyricism is most political punk says, here's this problem, we hate it, we stand against it, rise above, blah, blah, blah. Bad Religion actually proposes solutions sometimes. They're very solution-oriented. They have to, like you said, he's trying to solve a puzzle, and he's trying to say, well, what do we have to do? And most of the time you will get that in the very politically conscious lyrics, which is different than a lot of others. It's
really funny because I think my girlfriend made this TikTok where there's like this like Alex Jones like meme running around where he says like, I'm a man, I'm a Christian, and then like the people put like different like movies to that. She's doing that to bands, and like at one point Alex Jones was like, I'm a policy wonk, and she put Bad Religion for it, which made complete sense because I think you're right. They do kind of try to propose some of those solutions. They do try to kind of at least try, like, I'm not saying they've changed the world or they've solved all the world's problems. I want to be clear because I know everyone thinks I'm like a stand for this band, so I got to make that clear. I don't think it's not gone that far, but you're right.
I think they've even said one time, like, no band's ever going to change the world.
Yeah.
We're just impacting a small group of people.
Yeah, including me. And then there's one more thing I do have to say. Obviously, in terms of the actual how they write the lyrics, they use a lot of similes and metaphors to make their points, and the titular thesaurus rock, as this band's been called, because the joke with this band, you have to have a dictionary, thesaurus, or whatever next to you to kind of understand what they're saying half the time, because they use a lot of these big, obscure, old world words in their writing, which
They're
Again,
the
not-
ASAP Rocky of punk rock. You don't get that, but
Yeah, but which is interesting because not really something I hear in punk music, but which is why I've always appreciated it. But I can also see how some people might view it as pretentious. I kind of wanted to know what you guys think of that. What did you guys think of their use of those kind of big, obscure words?
I don't
stuff.
I don't think that I would ever classify Bad Religion as pretentious in any way. I think that they're. I mean, the guy's a fucking professor. He has a PhD.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like he's just an intelligent person. He's not trying to rub it in anyone's face. Like that's when I think of pretentious, I think like, oh, look how smart I am.
Yeah.
There's kind of a facade element. He's just really smart.
yeah, and also to go along with that, these songs are so hyper focused on a particular topic or issue that if they didn't explain it sort of elegantly with this thesaurus level diction, then it would come off as childish and sort of tone deaf in the long run.
Yeah.
There's just no way the lyrics could be written in any other way because that level of professionalism would be gone.
Yeah, and that's a great point, Michael. But to kind of go off what you said, Ben, I think one of the other reasons why I don't consider it pretentious is because this is what they're into. They're really into philosophy. They're really into kind of, intellectualizing things. So it honestly just fits who they are, really. It comes across as genuine. It doesn't come across as like, I have a thesaurus and you don't, kind of thing. It's kind of like, well, this is what we're into. So,
Right.
so yeah, I think that's a great way of putting it. To kind of round up this very extended intro or
Yes.
overview.
Intro.
It's not even an intro at this point. I feel so bad for Ben.
We'll bust through those albums.
The band has become one of the biggest in punk music. They've released 3 EPs over the years and 17 studio records, which kinda is where this episode's coming in today. Finally get to, I guess, the meat of this, or whatever we are at this point.
Let's have a intermission, however, to get our first potty break.
Good idea.
I like
Intermission.
All right.
We're coming back from the intermission. No time has passed for you. But before we get back into Bad Religion, just a little bit of a palate cleanser here. Either of you can answer with whatever you think. What do pigs and ink have in common? A little riddle here. What do pigs and ink have in common?
I'm trying to think of a Bad Religion pun I can do with this. I don't know. What do they have in common, Ben?
They both go in a pen.
Oh.
It's not funny.
No, not at all. But
Yeah.
good job.
And if you're in New Jersey, those pigs can't turn around because Chris Christie decided pigs don't deserve to turn around. They only get to stand and lay down.
Well,
There's a depressing fact for you. Anyways, Bad Religion.
Yes, let's get into this discography.
So-
Explain one more time how we divided this up.
So, okay. So, like I said earlier, this is kind of like a tiered list of like albums I think people should start with and then follow up on and then where to go from there if you really liked everything we heard at that point. Before I move any further, though, I do want to say that I did not come up with this idea. I got this kind of this format from a YouTuber called Crash Thompson, who you should definitely check out, by the way. His content's great. But he has a series called How to Get Into, where he kind of takes the band's discography and he'll break it down. He's like, this is where you should start first, and then like kind of go there from making steps. And that's what I've done with Bad Religion's discography because it's so huge, and I didn't want to have these guys listen to everything. I cut out 4 records at least. It's not super generous, but something. So I have at the top, the essentials is what I'm calling it. These are like the records you should absolutely hear. Start first. If you're not gonna hear anything else from this band, these are the records you should hear. The follow-ups, these are the ones I think that are still really good, but you should listen to once you've heard the essential stuff and go to if you really enjoyed what you heard. And then further listening is the last tier that we'll of records we'll be talking about. It's pretty much just like these records have their flaws, but they're still definitely worth talking about. And, I don't know. I mean, they're just good, and you should kind of wait to check those out.
Oh, Andrew, before we start, what did you leave out specifically, just for the completest?
So what did I leave out? So I'll mention them at the end, kind of when we start wrapping things up. But there's like what he calls like proceed with caution, Crash Thompson. I kind of put 4 records there. I put New Maps of Hell, which honestly could have been in the tier upwards, but I didn't. Again, I was trying to be nice to these guys. So I don't know. If you really want to check out the song "New Dark Ages." If you really want to hear what that record has to offer, but beyond that, I left out the last two Atlantic records, "No Substance" and "New America." I mean, it's because it's kind of considered the weakest like albums generally of their discography, not counting their second record. Yeah, I don't know. There's just not really much to talk about other than the band wasn't in a great place at the time. They weren't super happy being on Atlantic, so...
No
yeah.
EPs as well, right?
No EPs. We won't talk about their first EP. We won't talk about Back to the Known. We won't talk about the Christmas song covers thing. I don't care about that.
Ben's favorite album.
That's my personal favorite.
Oh, of course it is. And yeah, we won't go too detailed into their second record, Into the Unknown, but I do want to play a clip of that at the end because it is truly something remarkable. But yeah, beyond that, we're going to talk about everything else. They're in some way, shape, or form in these tiers. So
Yes, let's go.
without further ado, you guys have any other questions or can we get
Not
going?
really, man. I'm ready to suffer.
Ready to suffer.
Yeah.
And what do you know? That's the name of the first record we're talking about. All right. The Essentials. So I have 4 albums in this category. The first 3 in this tier are by many fans largely considered their golden trilogy. They're 3 absolute best records. I was actually I thought I had like a good consensus of what everyone thought was their best for a while, but honestly when I was looking at everything, no one really seems to have a consensus of what their best record is, so whatever. It's probably one of these 3. So we're going to start with Suffer, but before that, I should also mention we're going to go in chronological order within each tier, so we'll just go in the order they appear, like date-wise, but obviously the whole episode isn't formatted chronologically. And I'll also give like a brief synopsis of where the band was at this point, kind of in history-wise. And well, there's certainly a lot to talk about with Suffer, because the last record they released, Into the Unknown, I believe was like 83, before this, and everyone kind of thinks Suffer's their second record because their second album isn't on Spotify. And you might be thinking, what is the deal with the second album? For right now, all I'll say is it was a bit of a departure in sound, and I might be slightly underselling that. But I will not understand that everyone hated it for the most part, and people were just baffled and confused by it, and there was a lot of backlash, and yeah, didn't do too well in the sales wise, and damn near broke the band up. So so that's about as much I'll share right now. Jay Bentley had left kind of in the recording process of the second record. Brett left a couple years after, and then that's when they brought Greg Peston in. But eventually they brought Jay back into the fold. I think they played like a live set at one point, Jay did, and he was like, I have so much fun, I want to be back. And eventually Brett was brought back in the same year as Suffer, right around the time, to work on this record. Suffer.
I mean, if you can't tell, it's a good record, according to Andrew.
That's, to say the least, yeah. So for listeners who can't see at home, I have a giant Suffer blanket here that is so cool looking.
Yeah.
My girlfriend got for me as a present. It's so cool.
It really is.
It is. And so not only do I think objectively this is their best album, this is objectively one of the greatest punk records ever made. Top 5, and maybe even top 3. I know coming from me, that might not mean a lot, because of course you'd say that's your favorite band, but no, seriously. This album is 30 minutes of punk rock bliss. I don't even know where to start with this one, so I'm going to let you guys go off and speak with that. What did you guys think of Suffer?
Okay, so I got to put some context in here real quick, because you got to remember last week's episode, or a couple weeks ago's episode, was getting Andrew into hip-hop. So going from hip-hop to punk rock is a very big jump. So this is the album I started with, and I loved it, but it took me, I think, 2 or 3 listens before I got myself back into the punk mood. And when I did, that's when things started to happen. I mean, there's a reason it's regarded as so influential. This is the album that Fat Mike says just changed everything. This is the album that's regarded as the birthplace of skate punk. It's the album that it seems to be the musician's favorite album as well. All of the contemporaries seem to just surround this with praise. and I personally loved it as well. I definitely have a bias towards the B side of the record. I think that's where all the greater songs are. But yeah, it was a very enlightening experience, and at first I listened to it just laying in bed, didn't work. I tried doing it to some chores, didn't work, and then I decided to ride my bike to it because that's what you do.
Go.
That's what you do. And I thought to myself, I'm like, Andrew listens to this shit. Andrew's a biker. He listens to this while he's riding his bike. I got to see what that's like. And it changed it. That's what did it, man.
Yeah, man.
So that's my thoughts. So, did you listen at all, Ben?
Yeah. I listened to a few here and there. I was listening to this in the car, and that works as well.
It does. It really does.
This is one of those. I definitely see how you top 5 this, Andrew, because this is one of those records that's like everything about it is good. The design is good. Like just, it's all there. You know, it's like for the video, we're seeing an LP of it here, but
the classic "Boy on Fire."
I mean that's the tattoo. If anyone's getting a Bad Religion tattoo,
that's what I want to get one day. Is the
exactly
Boy on Fire.
Is that kid? So like, I mean, it's just. The packaging is great. The songwriting is great. It's catchy. It's short. It just works, you know? It's just a great fucking punk album. That's it, you know?
Dude, we got to play some songs.
Yeah.
What the fuck are we doing?
So, all right. So before I kind of get into nitty-gritty of this, I do want to play... I can't pick a favorite from this record. It's hard. If I were to start listing off songs, I just list the whole album. Just listen to the whole thing. But if there is one I do want to highlight, I want to highlight Part 2, The Numbers Game. It's a really underrated track from this album. And it's one of the greatest songs I've ever heard written about. You know, that's rails against war and U.S. imperialism. So let's hear it, Ben.
In superficial progress, they call it liberation. With opiates of silicon, big brother schemes to rule the nation. We're one nation under God, we stand above the rest. With mighty high technology, we're never second best. Our specialty is infiltration. Prepare yourselves for subjugation, victory through domination.
If for any astute listeners, I think Anita Sparks, I think that's her name, from L7, is in the backing vocals for that track.
Yeah.
Sick.
They could play that on Sesame Street.
Yeah, like, hey kids, let's learn about U.S. imperialism today.
Mm-hmm. And numbers.
The numbers.
And numbers.
And numbers. It's great. God, so this... I'm going to start with the production, because honestly, I think this is the best sounding punk album ever. I love how this album sounds. Like, everything's punchy. Everything has this right mix of, it's not like lo-fi, it's not super raw, but it still has some of that raw aggression that punk should have, but it's a little cleaner, but not too clean. I don't know how to put it. It has just this aggression and this punch that I don't think any other punk album has been able to replicate. Everything sounds where it should be. The guitars are just full and loud. Bass maybe could be a little higher, but I think that's just a slight nitpick. Honestly, I wouldn't change anything about how this record sounds. I love it so much. Greg is just energetic as hell on this album. Again, the guitar work from Grubitz and Heston are just fantastic. The drumming, I mean, they'll have better drummers later, but the guy, I forget his name, who's on this record, he does fine here. I mean, it's so good. Oh, it's so good. The hooks, everything is there. Everything's catchy. The lyrics are, they just touch on everything. They cut from unreliable politicians on "You Are the Government" and what can you do? Targets the religious rights and songs like "Thousand More Fools." It talks about the future of humanity and songs like "How Much Is Enough" and "When." They talk about the L.A. Hollywood scene at the time with Land of Competition. Brett even has a great song talking about his experiences as a drug addict on the song Forbidden Beat. I mean, again, I just be listening off the whole record here. I will say the song you heard at the top of this episode, "Do What You Want," is a fan favorite. Surprisingly, we didn't hear that live when we saw them, which is weird.
Very
It's
strange.
weird because it was like one of the earliest songs they had. It didn't get a music video at the time, but it eventually got an official video, and it's one of the earliest songs of the discography that had one. So
Yeah. Let me shout out one more song, my personal favorite, called "Give You Nothing." And I like this song in particular because, yes, we have been talking about Bad Religion's political lyricism and stuff like that, but sometimes they do make songs that are a little more ambiguous and can be applied to personal situations a lot more in their latter half of their career, but this is an example of that.
So you got a place that you call your own, but you gotta have it up your in the zone. Look around and ask someone if you are alive. You're a sidewalk slave and think of bionic time. So I give you me, I give you nothing. I give you me, I give you nothing. Respectable, despicable, it seems all the same. Now we realize that
I can affirm you will not suffer while listening to Suffer.
no, you know what that song's about? So it's written. I think he's been written a couple times. I think his name is Tom. I don't remember, but Brett wrote that song, and it was a reference to a friend that he had who died in a car accident. Although he's always expected that it was actually a suicide.
Yeah.
So yeah, you were and thinking, that's great, Michael, because like I know we've read about they're all about their political and societal and religious lyrics, but you're right, they do write really good personal songs sometimes, and really or even some of their own personal experiences. So, and I think that's a great example of one.
Absolutely. I think
It's a little bit more of a respectable car crash song than something like Detroit Rock City.
I
would say
definitely
so.
say so. Oh my God.
I have a song that I would like to play as well.
Go ahead.
I'm only playing a few today. I've listened to some of this, not everything. But I'd like to play, speaking of religious stuff, 1,000 More Fools.
Yes.
Clue.
I heard them say that the meek shall reign on earth. Phantasmal myriads of Satan who call it birth. I've seen the rapture in a stun of baby's eyes. Inchoate Peter to the Lord of the Flies. So what does it mean when your mind starts to stray? Kaleidoscopic images of love on the way. Brother, you better get down on your knees and pay. 1,000 more fools are being born every fucking day.
Platonic, Myriad, Breath Lord of the Flies. Yeah,
Yes.
that's a Bad Religion song.
Before we move on to the next album, I wanted to, because you heard a pick slide in that song, and it will not be the last you hear a pick
Yeah.
slide in a Bad Religion song. So it depends on how much Ben wants to put into this episode, but I think every time you say Bad Religion is my favorite band, I want a pick slide.
or like someone yells Yahweh, from like the
Yeah.
Suffer. It was not Suffer. Do What You Want. Yeah. Again.
Let's go to No Control. I got no
Yes.
control of how this episode's going to work.
Yes. But what does that even mean? To kind of round this up, though, like Michael said, this is the ground zero of like '90s punk. So many bands have gone to parody this album artwork. I know NoFX, The Offspring. I'm sure plenty of other bands have done it before. This album started it all. So
Yeah, you can hear, there are a lot of like pale imitations of music like this, but this
Yeah.
is ground zero, I'd say.
Yep.
yeah. While I think this is their best album objectively, this is not my favorite record. That comes with No Control. My favorite album of all time. I probably not shocked that my favorite album ever is a Bad Religion one, but no, it's No Control. And maybe song by song it's not as consistent as Suffer, but I tend to like the songs just a little bit more in No Control. I like the production more in No Control.
Yeah.
Wow,
There's a certain flavor that this album has that the other ones don't. I think it actually is rooted in how the bass is mixed It's a lot cleaner. It's a lot punchier. If you listen to you're not a guitar guy, Andrew, but one of the things I actually did do for this episode is I watched a rig rundown of Bad Religion, and for this particular album, Jay was using a much more reverb heavy amp system as compared to what was to come later. So you hear a little more cleaner bass, which I think serves Gaffin's vocals a little more.
And to kind of go off of gear, I've heard because one of the things I think this album really makes it stand out is how the guitars sound as well, because everything is kind of compressed this weird way where it's just this brutal like sonic assault instrumentally. I think Brett has said he used to have these little clips on the website, on like the Bad Religion website, where he would talk about like the making of each record for a little bit. And for this one, he said, I think he used a box called an Aphex Compeller. I don't know music gear very well, so I don't know what exactly that changed. But he said he recorded everything through that. And at first he hated it, and he tried to like recompress everything. But eventually he grew to really like it, as he should, because this record sounds awesome. This is the one album where I will say that they really did sound like they were melodic hardcore because of how brutal these guitars are. This album was released only a year after Suffer, and it already feels kind of like they're a slightly different band because of that. They were also really leaning more heavily into like the bigger obscure words on this one. There were more there wasn't as many straight up political tracks on this one as they were more kind of focused on like societal pondering. Greg Graffin, I can hear a lot of those intellectual puzzles he was trying to solve in songs like It Must Be Pretty Appealing and No Control. I love this record so much.
Let's hear a song.
Well, if you want to hear a song, okay. Well, again, trying to pick a favorite from this one's hard. And for a while, I thought it was Billy. For a while, it was Billy. I love Billy so much. I actually heard that live, and hearing that deep cut live was a truly magical moment. But at this point, I think the song Big Bang just narrowly edges it out because, again, you hear that just brilliant sonic assault right from the get-go with those guitars. It's one of the most pummeling, brutal, aggressive riffs in their entire discography.
And an example of how Gaffin brings science.
Not only science, it is one of if not their most layered song lyrically. Not only. So obviously you can hear the term Big Bang. You talk about the Big Bang, Big Bang, Big Crunch. There's no free lunch. Obviously referring to the Big Bang and the Big Crunch theories. But it's used to kind of describe, kind of relate to overpopulation and dwindling resources and whatnot. And eventually things have to break. But also I've also heard theories that it's also about political revolution and how there's only so much a population can take before they take action or things explode. And there's so many different ways you can take this song. It's like under 2 minutes, just under 2 minutes. It's brilliant and amazing, and I can gush about it forever. Just play it, Ben. Just play it. It just, oof.
Our whole universe was in a hot, dense state that nearly 14 million years ago expansion started.
Thank you. Thank you for that.
Why?
Very scientific, Andrew. Yeah. Sorry, that was my personal playlist.
Oh no.
Another new fashion or a new way plastic trend. Everybody's searching for something to be done. Let's all just pretend. I got this feeling and I don't know what it is. This room is overcrowded and I need it to breathe. Yeah, Big Bang, Big Crunch. There's no free lunch. Kneel down and pray. Here comes your judgment day. Big Crunch. It's gonna be quite a show. What goes around always comes around. Yeah.
So tempting to play that live. And one thing I do want to say real quick, you can also hear it throughout this record. Graffin has this really nasally kind of performance on his stuff. It's really this snarky nasally delivery, and I really like it. And he's just flying at 1,000,000 miles an hour. So a lot of times this band has a weird tendency to kind of shoehorn like words into like to make like a melody fit. It doesn't always work, but they somehow make it work on this record for the most part, and we're still just going just insanely fast. Like, even though this is my favorite record, I still can't recite it fully by memory still because of how quick everything is. It's just it's amazing. I love this album.
You don't feel like, because this is the reaction I had at first, and then I came to understand it. Do you feel like Gaffin sort of gets smothered by how fast this goes, and it sort of takes away melodically?
It at times it does. You're right, but I mean I don't know. Like sometimes it does. In songs like sometimes I feel like that's a good example of when that happens. But even on Big Bang, I think they really somehow still able to like create this really nice melody, kind of gliding over everything else that's happening. I think they actually did a pretty good job fitting in melodies with songs this quick. That's just me, though.
No, I agree. And that leads into the song I wanted to bring up, which is I Want to Conquer the World, which is definitely, it stands alone as kind of a precursor of what would come in terms of how they write their songs after that, because this is an example where it's not really choked up and fast, but still just a fucking awesome song. And I think that is one of the first ones I've ever heard, Bad Religion. This is a song I discovered before this episode, so go ahead and play it, Ben.
Hey brother Christian with your high and mighty errand, your action speaks so loud I can't hear a word you're saying. Hey sister bleeding heart with all of your compassion, your labors through the hurt but can't assuage temptation. Hey man of science with your perfect rules of measure, can you improve this place with the data that you gather? Hey mother mercy, can your lungs bear fruit forever? Is your fecundity a tremble or a treasure? And I wanna conquer the world, give all the idiots a brand new religion, put an end to poverty, uncleanliness and toil, promote equality and all of my decisions with a quick wink of the eye, and God you must be joking.
You can kind of, dude, Greg's kind of got flow though.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
I was gonna say I've seen memes where like everyone's like, yeah, Greg is like spitting hot fire. He's like a good rapper. I know I've seen that. And you're right though. And it's interesting because that's actually another great example of lyrical layering. I mean, like you could. At first, like when I first heard that, I think a lot of people do. It was like, yeah, man, I want to conquer the world and change everything too. But like, I think Brett said no. It's actually kind of like an anti-war song, and it's about like, I don't know. Like at first, I take it like, well, no, just because you think you have good ideas doesn't mean force and what's right isn't how you achieve that. But I don't know. I feel like there's a lot more to that song. It's such an interesting track lyrically. And again, another great song from this record. I'd start listing off songs people should check out, but just listen to the whole album. Yeah. Everything is so good. The title track, the opener, Change of Ideas, which we played in our short songs episode, must look pretty appealing. It's this really interesting song about, again, kind of more of that moral pondering about, I think Greg was the one who wrote that, and he kind of looks at like someone living in like rural, like the sticks, like rural America, someone lives in a big city, and they're both like fantasizing about like living in like each other's like lives, kind of. You know, obviously they don't know each other, but they're like city person wants to live in the rural area, and then vice versa, and but you know, without even really knowing what it's like, and they're both miserable in their existence. It's so interesting. Like this album really raises a lot of interesting points. Anxiety too, for that matter. Listen to the album. I'm just going to say, listen to this record. It's so good.
Yeah.
Ben, what did you think about this one?
Before we move on, I have a little something to play, the aforementioned Sometimes I Feel Like. And this one stuck out to me because there was sort of there's like a little atonality to it once in a while, and I really like that. So I'm just going to play a little bit.
In between the verse and choruses?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So here's that.
There's spectre in the corner of an illustrated page, and a lonesome muted stripling with a rapt remedial gaze. The poverty of his language and the wealth of his emotion bring him into murky musings and unexpected frustration. Makes him man and sweet the fabric of his life. Tomorrow might be better, but right now it feels like There's a band one and far behind the bars of a rattling cage, and an underdeveloped didn't like the women.
I'm so glad you mentioned that atonality because it's going to progress perfectly in this next record.
Yeah.
Do you mind if I actually introduce?
Sure, but just kind of to round off this record again, I just love how this record sounds. I can easily hear how like a band like Rise Against, was influenced by Bad Religion. I can definitely hear that melodic hardcore in here. So that being said, we're gonna. Michael wants to round off the Golden Trilogy. What record are we talking about?
We're actually coming into 1990s now. This is released in 1990, Against the Grain, the 5th studio LP.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason why I'm so glad Ben played that song is because we get some sort of dissonance in a Bad Religion song, which, like I mentioned before, tends to be the songs I gravitate towards, and I get a good collection of those on Against the Grain. The mixing already is just very different. The bass now has more gain rather than the clean tones we heard on No Control. The guitar playing gets a definite upgrade. Like I said, it's a little more dissonant. It's a little more shrill. It gives me some sort of like a pit in my stomach and like the conflict that needs to be resolved in a song. You know what I mean? And it even slips out of time signatures at sometimes. I think it's Quality or Quantity is the one where it does that. And it's the first album to get 100,000 sales. So you can tell it's a put together record. It pushed them a little bit towards getting the mainstream. Of course, that didn't happen until they went to Atlantic. But this is, I think, my fave Bad Religion album.
Okay.
Yeah.
And you know what? You're definitely not alone. A lot of fans agree with that. For a while, I thought this was generally considered the fan favorite, the what fans consider to be the best record. And I'm going to be a bit of a contrarian here, and I'm going to say this is my least favorite of like the Golden Trilogy records. In
Really?
fact, there's a couple records I like more than Against the Grain. And honestly, I think this record's on the tad overrated side. It's interesting to bring up the dissonance, and you say that you really kind of like that with how they produced it. I'm not as big of a fan on that. I think the production isn't quite as there as you got with the first two. I think that might just come down to like kind of what you want from it, and I'm actually. Thank you. And I'm really happy you liked this one a lot. I think this is a really solid record. Don't get me wrong. It's a great album. So many just classic tracks in here. But yeah, it's I don't know. For me, it just doesn't. It's just something that is not just a tad not as there with the previous two records we just talked about. But again, this is often derived as a fan favorite. It's still a great record, which is why I put it in the top tier.
Yeah. You want to give us our first song example?
Sure. I will go with the album closer, Walk Away. I think it's one of the most underrated tracks in their entire discography. It's this great song about, it tells like a small narrative about this like old man Fletcher who says like, I'm sure they're going to walk away from something. We don't really know what it is, but he does it. Like, and we find out he says he's going to do it in the first verse, doesn't do it in the second verse, but I'm surely going to do it, he says by the end of that one. And, it's kind of like how people become, it's a really interesting case study about how like people kind of become complacent in our society with how their own lives are, and they don't want to, and then the fear of change or moving on, which is something I think all of us can relate to, at least at some point in our lives. So, it could be about a relationship, it could be about a job, it could be about anything that they're just afraid to walk away from. So, I don't know. Go ahead and play that, Ben.
Shut off the TV and peel off the Sunday gloves, and I'll stain the cleaner you've been counting. Old Mr. Fletcher passed by here today. After 40 years of toil, he just up and walked away. Fantastic, the panic that's shown in his eyes. He shrugged when I asked him about it. He said, young man, hey, heed you, listen well to what I say. Now there comes a time for a man to walk away, walk away. I'll be a parade, and I'll be determined that no one shall dissuade on my way. I'll sure take some time and burn all the bridges that I'm leaving behind.
Yeah, I know I sounded I was a little harsh in this record at first, but no, this, especially with just songs like that on there, I love this album still so much. There's so many standout tracks. Operation Rescue is a really great song against, I think there was like an organization with that name that was operating, at least at that time, I don't know if they're still around, that doesn't like people having abortion rights, and those people can go screw themselves, and that's a great song against pro-lifers. Anastasia is another great song where Brett talks about his experiences with drug addiction. Turn on the Light is a really nice, snarky track. I love the opener, Modern Man. There are a couple clunkers on here. I'm not as big fan of the title track or Unacceptable. Those aren't for me, but overall, this record's still really good.
Yes.
And I'm really happy that you like this is your favorite one,
Yes,
Michael.
and I have to play a song that's pretty self-explanatory, but gives you an example of how Bad Religion's political lyricism still stands today in Flat Earth Society.
Oh, yeah. Unfortunately.
Unfortunately.
Society is meeting here today, singing happy little lies on the right ship, Humana is sailing far away with great determination and no destination. Lie, 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 lie. Yeah, nothing feels better than the spray.
Ben, did you have anything from this this album right here?
Yeah, what do you think about this one, Ben?
I like it. You actually just took mine, though.
Oh, sorry. I guess I'll go fuck myself. Do we want to move on, or do you have anything else?
What did you think about this record, Ben?
No, I mean,
thoughts on it?
It's Flat Earth Society was definitely my top. I wanted to ask about that. Is that legitimately just about what it sounds like?
Yeah, I mean, it is. That one is. I mean, they use it as an example, pretty sure, to talk about people who are outdated in their ideologies. But yeah, they do specifically go to because there is an actual organization called the Flat Earth Society, that was around then, and I think still around today, where they talk about how they think the Earth is flat, and that's just great.
It's flat.
Flat like the top of the hat.
Top of that.
Oh my god. The other thing I'll mention, people who might only know the next record we're talking about, which is a good chance that is the case. The first version of 21st Century Digital Boy comes on this record, and I think it's the superior version. I'll get to that when we talk about the next record. But before we do that, I don't really get into much historical context with that, but that's because we've been pretty good in keeping with the same records. Not a lot's been happening between Suffer and No Control and this one. They were all released in a row, and I don't know, they were just touring. They would stop and record these and keep touring. We're jumping forward a couple years to 1994's Stranger Than Fiction. This one's an important point in their discography because this is their first album that they appeared on Atlantic. We've skipped a couple records, so they've been getting a lot of traction, beginning making music videos, beginning chart success even, and I believe the band had a friend, I want to say, who's at Atlantic and said, "Hey man, you should come on. You can only get so big on an indie label because obviously they're still on Epitaph Records," and well, funny enough, they should say that because by the time they did sign onto Atlantic, because they decided, we do want our music to reach a larger audience, and so sure, we'll try Atlantic. You want to know another record that came out in 1994 that was on Epitaph Records?
It's a word that the Hulk likes to say.
By a little band called The Offspring. You're right. Smash came out in 1994, and I believe is still one of the greatest selling...
Sorry.
I'm sorry. I believe is one of the greatest selling indie records of all time. What are you laughing at?
Sorry.
It's the Hulk.
we had to get a little. Hey.
That's our crossover. That's our
Michael.
Our crossover with Raving Geeks.
Yeah.
Oh gosh. No. But anyways, yeah, no. So yeah, Smash was released that year and had like huge radio singles on that record, and it's still played on. I still hear on the radio to this day. Rancid also was there, and I believe Outcome the Wolves came out the following year. So yeah, this is a big time for Epitaph Records. They was selling millions of records, and like out of nowhere, Brett was just like kind of like, oh my god, I have to try to run Epitaph, which we'll get to later on how that kind of led to his second departure. But
I gotta ask you, Andrew, this is the big question on everyone's mind. When a punk band signs to a major label, there's always going to be controversy there.
Yeah.
Does that go against the punk logic?
You know, I don't know. I mean, sure. I mean, yeah. If you're a punk band, signing to a major label isn't the most punk thing ever. I agree. I'd be reminiscent to say they sold out because their sound didn't really change. Mm-hmm. You did like maybe the production got a little cleaner. That's about it. Like really, like it's still Bad Religion. So I've never really been the one to say they sold out when they went to Atlantic, but I don't know. Just to say it's not punk, I can see either or.
Well, the reasoning behind it in every interview I watched was we just want more people to hear our music. It wasn't a money thing. Mm-hmm. I mean, yeah, Epitaph was doing fine. They were getting, and their records, like I said, the ones that came before this in their kind of golden era sold fantastically. Not to the reception that the Atlantic records got, but enough.
Yeah, they were for punk records. They were selling pretty good,
right? So
and, like it was kind of unprecedented for Epitaph to be getting as much success with those other bands as they did. I mean, for indie labels really hadn't gotten that kind of attention before. Right. Maybe I guess Sub Pop maybe at that point, but it was a big thing, and and of course they were already to Atlantic at that point. So, but yeah, I think I think they did want to get more exposure. I agree, and so it makes sense, and I think they definitely got that with 1994 Stranger Than Fiction, which was the first record they released on that.
Give us a good song off of Stranger Than Fiction.
So yeah, before I kind of get into my thoughts on that, I do kind of want to play, and you will hear again a bit of a difference in production. Things are not as blown out. Things are not as crazy in your face loud. It's just kind of a little cleaner, but still quintessentially the melodic Bad Religion that we know. I actually am gonna. Technically not an album track. It was technically, I think, a bonus track in like Japan or something. So I'm cheating slightly, but I don't care because it's the best song in the record to me. We're talking about News from the Front. Yeah, that's another song I tend to take a lot from lyrically. I mean, it was written about the AIDS crisis at the time and kind of about how everyone failed to respond to that, which, and it's a great song when you think about it that way. But the lyrics are just vague enough where you can apply this to so many different things. You can apply this to war. You can apply this to I've thought about like the Flint water crisis when I've heard that. Like especially when the lines like it was something like. And the governors can't deny the news from the front. I kind of think specifically Michigan when I hear that line. So, so many different things you can apply to that track, and I love it for it. And I don't think, from my understanding, I don't think that song made it on the final. I don't think that song made it on the final product because Gruowitz was kind of out by that point. I think just because of how the shakeups were happening, it was one that it was mainly. I think a lot of people are credited on that one, but I think he was the one who mainly penned that. So it just kind of got lopped off. Yeah, It was a shame because it's a great song. Yeah. So the reason I put this one in the essentials category, listen, I'm not gonna lie. This is not one of my favorite records from them. I think this is kind of mid-tier, even slightly below it. It's like, there's a lot of dud tracks on here. I don't think the lyrics are. This is one of their weakest albums lyrically, from my vantage point. The reason I put it on there though is because this was, I think, one of their biggest charting, probably I think their biggest album chart wise, and it got them a lot of success. It's pretty mainstream. It's clean enough where I think anyone who's into pop punk would be able to get into this and this is an accessible point for them. Like if you're really into like Green Day, I'd say start here. Like that's honestly the big reason why I put it up here. Even though for me it just doesn't do as much for me. Like I don't know.
Well, it's interesting you're talking about this because this was the first record I discovered and was my favorite for a long time before this episode, remember? Mm-hmm. So, and I think there's a lot of just good accessible tracks on here. Mm-hmm. Tiny Voices, Better Off Dead. I think The Handshake is another good one.
Yes.
But it was the first one to go certified gold, and I think only one to go gold. Yeah. So I think this one is definitely not something you want to pass up, especially if you want to get kind of the evolution of the band. This is pretty essential to throw in there. My favorite song off of this is probably Better Off Dead. This was just like an absolute jam when I was in high school for me. That's the song I always come back to.
I used to like it a lot too, but go ahead, man, play it.
I'm sorry about the sun. How could I know that you would burn? And I'm sorry about the moon. How could I know that you disapprove? And I'll never make the same mistake the next time I create the universe. I'll make sure we communicate it late. Oh yeah. But until then, better off dead. A star on the lips and a hole in the head. Better off dead. You're better than this. Take it away, 'cause there's nothing to miss. I'm sorry.
That's I really like that track too, although it is kind of indicative to kind of my problem with this record though. Again, I really like Better Off Dead, and the lyrical idea behind it is interesting. It's kind of, the whole thing is like writing a letter to God, saying, hey, no, I think it's God kind of speaking down to people saying, hey, I didn't know you wouldn't respond to all these things, even though you're supposed to be the benevolent, all-knowing creator. Surely you would know. But I feel like it was kind of the idea behind it was kind of half-baked, and I don't know. I just feel like the lyrics almost felt like an afterthought at time for this. Like, incomplete, love the song overall, but it pretty much is just a list of similes and metaphors. They all just kind of say the same thing. Mm-hmm. I don't know. Television is one of their stupidest songs they've ever written. It like Tim Armstrong from Rancid on there for no reason, and it's just dumb. Individual is so, I loved it in like 10th grade, but like looking back, it's so cringy. It's like, the individuals are being persecuted. It's like, what? I don't know. Like there are just songs in here. I'm just like,
I'm glad you can look at this stuff pretty objectively.
Yeah, I try to. I think as I've been with these albums for so long, I've really been able to really examine a lot of it. That being said, though, this record has so many jams. Though I love the title track so much. Stranger Than Fiction. It's a great example of how this band can take a cliche like Stranger Than Fiction and kind of make it their own thing.
Right.
I really like The Handshake. That's a great song. I mean, they're dissecting a handshake and like all like the socio-political dealings around a handshake. It's such a bad religious thing. I love it. Marked is great too. There are a lot of jams on this, but I feel like the second half kind of lags a bit, and I don't know. What?
Did you know that Fat Mike had a parody of the handshake called the Milkshake?
I didn't, and I didn't want to know that, to be honest.
That's a lie. It's a joke.
Okay. I'm glad it's a lie.
Overall, I think this one's pretty timeless.
It's a good record, but I feel like, I don't know. I feel like it just doesn't hit us hard.
Yeah. I'd also like to point out that whoever this guy is on the far right looks like Adam Sandler in
That's
Uncut
actually
Gems.
Brett Gurewitz.
Oh, well. He looks like, on this album cover, for the listener, It's being shown to the camera. He looks like Adam Sandler on Uncut Gems.
Yeah.
It does. You're right. Yeah, he had this weird look. He was wearing like sunglasses a lot, and he had this goatee. I don't know.
Let's move on.
Let's move on.
Before we go on to the next section, I do have another palate cleanser here
Okay.
Oh, thank you.
from a popsicle.
Great.
These are Rocket Pops. I bought them at Target, so there's a free ad. What kind of pie does a ghost prefer? And this one is a pun.
A moon pie? I don't know.
No. I don't know.
A blueberry pie.
That actually made me hurt.
Okay, back to Generator.
Yes.
Generator. We're now going on to the next tier. These are like the things albums I think people should follow up. They're not like perfect, but still really, really good.
Yes.
And so once you've heard the first stuff and hopefully you've really enjoyed it, this is where you go next. And now we're going on to 1992.
92.
92.
Sixth LP.
6 LP. It was written in 91, but it was released in 92. Generator. Again, not much really to report history-wise, although this did feature the band's first music video with the song Atomic Garden. They were starting to really get a lot of attention. This is where it really started to kind of pick up. This is one of the records I prefer over Against the Grain. This is probably my third favorite Bad Religion record. I really like it a lot. However, I'd be lying if I said it didn't have like a big glaring flaw, and that's the production. I can easily see why it's not going to be for everyone. Everything on here sounds kind of brittle and I'm going to kind of like it, but I can see why, like, hearing these just really dissonant guitars that's not as punchy as the previous stuff could turn people off. I don't know. What did you guys think overall of Generator?
I thought this was a great project. I like this quote from Brett. It was time for a change. I was bored. We did it in a different studio, but as far as the songwriting, it was a deliberate effort to try something different.
Yeah.
And that is what I usually expect out of the bands I listen to. Of course, you're going to still have what makes Bad Religion so great, but I think this is probably the most experimental album out of all of them.
I agree.
Yeah, it sounds like it borrows from like some 80s alternative as well, which I really enjoyed. Excellent solos and guitar work. Really diverse use of tempo. I really like, I think this one's strong lyrically too. Only Entertainment is a great song about kind of just like fluff news and how we're kind of prioritizing that. And as journalism students, that hits home.
I have a really weird relationship with that one because as we're all journalists, I really have grown to appreciate that one over the past few years.
Yeah, and the drums and guitars are mixed very thin, like you're talking about. It's definitely different, but it makes it unique. You know, it almost gives it a sort of a black metal quality, which I kind of like. It's really shrill, but you can tell they were trying to do something different, and it's just a huge breath of fresh air for me. So.
Yeah, I figured you would have at least appreciated this record for that, Michael. But I'm glad to hear you really like it overall. I mean, I would start listing off songs, but I couldn't.
Yeah. You mind if I actually play mine first? Because I want to show people how different this album turns. There's like prepared piano in this song, Atomic Garden, which was a single, I believe, right?
Yes, it was the biggest song probably off this record.
So go ahead and give that a play.
Everybody wants to dance in a playpen, but nobody wants to play in my garden. I see the hippies on an angry line. Guess they don't get my meaning. I'm enchanted by the birds and my possums. I'm enamored by young lovers on the weekend. I like the 4th of July when bombs start flashing. And I wish I had a shiny red top, a bugle with a big brass bell would cheer me up, or maybe something bigger that could really go pop. Then I could make the gardening stop. Come out to play, come out to play, and we'll pretend it's Christmas Day in my atomic.
I've always loved how just chaotic and just insane that song is.
Yeah.
I think it's very clearly supposed to take in mind like the president of the United States, about like he has this weird power complex that he gets to like hold like nuclear weapons, and his reference to Gorbachev because obviously the Cold War just kind of ended. It's really good. It's really good, and you definitely hear some interesting changes in structure and what they try to bring to the table.
Another interesting factoid about this album was they really wanted it to stand out as different from all the other ones, and that goes to show in the artwork. This is the first where they're actually kind of using a sort of artistic photo, like detail photo. And when you look at this on Spotify, you see this as kind of the outlier, just like black and very simple colors.
It calls back to the REM episode, I think. Like, it really looks like an album cover. You talked about that influence of sort of that 80s stuff, and it looks like an album cover from that time period.
Yeah. You also have tracks like Too Much to Ask and Two Babies in the Dark. That latter kind of like maligned by fans, although I kind of like it. There's another example of how they changed up. They also started playing around with mid-tempo songs. They hadn't really. They did that with Faith Alone last episode. The last record. But you definitely got more of that with The Answer, which is like the ultimate agnostic anthem, as I like to say. Tomorrow is a great song as well. I'm still a little confused by what that song kind of refers to, but it's very clearly about. I think it's a very similar vein as the song No Control is what the topic is. Yeah. No Direction. Not gonna lie, that one hasn't aged particularly well to me. I don't like it as much as I did back when I was in high school, but it's still an interesting track talking about where people find direction in life. The title track is a great one about kind of like sudden, like kind of like religion too. Although it's a little too dense to kind of dive into right here. But the one that I will play, because I'm a sucker for anti-war songs. I already played one in this episode. I'm going to do it again. Fertile Crescent, which is kind of talking about, because obviously the Gulf War was happening at this time, and they were obviously not fans of it. Neither am I. And yeah, it's just a song kind of about like how the Fertile Crescent, that region of the world, how it's kind of the birthplace of humanity, and now it's a site of endless destruction. So here we go.
It's a manifestation of a deeper fight that affects me and you. My optimism was running high. A new world order was on my mind, but I couldn't believe it when I heard them say they're throwing it away. And the Fertile Crescent is burning today, and baby, my emotions are too. The cradle of humanity has led us all astray, and we're holding this together, don't you know? 'Cause our species has nowhere else to go.
Any thoughts on this one, Ben?
I mean, I'm not as familiar with this one, but when you're immersing yourself in their discography, you really do start to notice the little differences. Mm-hmm. And the production is weird on that. And I don't think it's a fault of it at all.
Yeah.
I enjoy how it sounds.
Yeah, sure. I've grown to appreciate it too. I guess it was just a little hard for me at first.
Right. Let's move on to 1993.
You know what? I don't know why we brought popsicles when we have a recipe for hate we could have enjoyed ourselves.
I should have made some hate before this, but I didn't have all the ingredients.
Yeah, sorry.
Jesus Christ. Yeah, so we're moving on to the next record. Next record after Generator, Recipe for Hate, 1993. This was, again, kind of a big step up for the band in terms of success. This got them 2 charting singles, American Jesus and Struck a Nerve. This was kind of the lead up to them signing to Atlantic Records.
Yeah.
And in terms of historical context of this was written, I believe, in 1992, at least with that year in mind, because obviously what was 1992 is an indicator of. Anyone know?
I didn't think I would get a pop quiz on this episode.
Do you know Ben? Do you remember from school? No. The Columbus sailed of the ocean blue in 1492. It's really the 500th anniversary of that. That was happening that year, and obviously, hopefully they don't really teach that in school anymore. I hope not. They taught it when I was there. It just makes me sad. Obviously, it's BS. Obviously, you did not discover the New World. It was people were already there for thousands of years already. No one discovered that except for the people who were first there. It was obviously white European-centric BS, and of course that led to Well, and they kind of tied that into creating the title for this record, Recipe for Hate. It was supposed to be, and that's what the title track's about. It's kind of the discovery of the new world and how that led to, just generations of genocide and slavery and injustice and everything. And really, unfortunately, another really well-aged track that they've written here with Recipe for Hate. It's such a powerful track to this day. I was playing that a lot one of the songs I was playing a lot last summer to kind of just, with the whole, protests that were happening there. So it's a really strong record, I think, from a lyrical stance. Production, again, I think it's a little faulty. It sounds a little washed out. For me, this one, I've never really enjoyed how this record sounds from that respect. Although it's not every track. A lot of songs do sound really good on here. But before I go any further, I want to know, what did you guys think of Recipe for Hate?
Yeah, this was the was this the last album before they switched to Atlantic?
Yes, it was.
Yeah, so this, if we're continuing with the REM comparison, this is the out of time, I think, for REM, because this is when they start bringing in elements of like country and folk and stuff, which I think is really cool.
Yeah.
Man with a Mission, Struck a Nerve are the examples there. And some guest vocals too, particularly from Eddie Vedder.
Yeah, he not only did he sing backing vocals on American Jesus, but he did a whole verse on the song Watch It Die.
He did indeed. And I would argue even some hip-hop rap influences on here. This is, again, where we're getting like some strong flow from from Greg. I think it's a solid album front to back. Like I said, very comparable to Out of Time. We're kind of like getting these mixtures from other genres and stuff. And again, it's just a breath of fresh air in this sort of experimental age.
I know a lot of people didn't like how mid-tempo this record got. And especially in the middle section, there's a lot of mid-tempo tracks. But I really like all of them except for All Good Soldiers, which I will argue is the worst Bad Religion song. They tried something new and they failed. It's a clunky, awful mess. So I'm not saying they can't try something new. In fact, they did something on the next record we'll talk about that I'm excited to play, but not All Good Soldiers. That one doesn't really work.
Yeah. Let me play my song first. I honestly thought this was a big Black cover. I was disappointed a little bit, but I still think it's a rockin' song.
This song's about another song about Brett's. I'm pretty sure it's another song about Brett's drug addiction.
Yeah.
Kerosene, right?
Kerosene. Go ahead. And we cannot talk about this album without mentioning a certain song.
Yes. This is the fact that this song has not shown up on either of our political anthems episode makes me sad, but it's okay because now we get to have a special part for this year. There's a lot of great songs in this record. Again, they're not as consistent as some of the previous ones we talked about, but still really strong. I definitely recommend checking out all of it. Out of everything. But if for whatever reason you're just tired of hearing me babble and you never want to think about Bad Religion again, do me a favor. If you're going to at least listen to one song, one singular track from this band, make it American Jesus. It's probably a really normie pick to say, but it's my favorite Bad Religion song because, oh my holy hell, it's one of the greatest political songs ever written. It's one of the greatest punk songs ever written. It's definitely their best song. I will argue that tooth and nail forever. It has the riff is iconic. Vocal performance is just done very well. lyricism is off the charts. I mean, this ties everything wrong that was wrong not only with America then, but wrong with America now, and ties it in this like atheist criticism bubble. Oh my God. Like the breakdown is one of the greatest I've ever heard in music. It's just them listing all these injustices in America, and then like conservative contrarians walking back. It's like, well, screw you, kind of thing. It's like, it's so well done. In fact, especially we're talking about the age of Trump. The first lines in the first two really speak to me still. I feel sorry for the Earth's population because so few in the USA, I should say this is all sarcastic. The song's very sarcastic in a lot of ways. Because so few of the USA, at least the foreigners, can copy our morality. They can visit, but they cannot stay. Oh, that burns. Mm-hmm. That burns to this day, but it's so well written. Yes. And it again, this was, Reagan had passed, but the religious right was still kind of there. So this was kind of talking about like, well, if America, because, I've heard, and I've never been able to confirm this, but I've heard that this was kind of a response to the start of the Gulf War by Bush when he said, well, we'll win because, God's on America's side. And it's kind of this whole idea is like, well, why does God backing America? And if he does, well, look at all the injustices that he causes if he is. And it's so just the layering again with the song. It's so good. It still gives me chills to this day how good the song is.
Beautiful to hear live as well. One of my favorite memories is you and I jamming out to this song at the show.
A magical moment for me.
Yeah. You want to show your shirt to the camera one more time, Ben?
Yes.
The American Jesus.
The American
himself.
Machine Gun Jesus. And
yes.
This was a very special moment to hear the song live. It's one, if like Layla didn't exist, this would be my favorite song ever. So with that out of the way though, let's hear American Jesus and that iconic opening riff.
Oh, yeah. Jam and a half.
Yeah.
I must say, also, before we move on, just a technical note for the listener, because I want to commend everyone on this. You're not hearing it by design. I hope you didn't hear it. But we sort of do little show behind-the-scenes business while we're playing stuff. And we have to do that with like the precision of an Indy 500 pit crew today because these songs are so short and the clips are so short, but we're getting shit done during these songs. So I just want everyone to know that. I did a full camera switch in a minute.
Well, thank you.
Yeah.
I appreciate you all working with me on this. And as we move on to the final album in this follow-up tier that I've created, right? No, second. No, we got another one after this. My bad. Sorry, jumping ahead of myself. 2001's Process of Belief.
Yes.
So this 2002. Thank you.
2001.
I get it mixed up sometimes. Yeah, Process of Belief. This was a return album for them. There's a lot that's happened between this one and because we're jumping way forward in time. This is the first album they released back on Epitaph after leaving Atlantic. I think at that point Jay was like, "Yeah, we just want to be done. We're tired of this." I don't exactly know how the chat started talking again, but Brett came back into this band.
Yep.
At this point too, although he wasn't really a full-time member. I think it started around this time where he kind of came back, but since he was so busy running Epitaph Records, it was kind of a thing where it's like he only does the studio work. He'll write the songs, he'll play on it, but he doesn't tour. Very rarely does he play live shows anymore. So I don't know, which made me ask real quick, do you guys know of any other band that has that kind of arrangement where it's major members of the band don't tour?
Well, an example that ties into a band we were talking about earlier once the Beach Boys got a lot more involved in the studio with stuff like Pet Sounds, Brian Wilson wasn't touring with them anymore. He was just working on music.
Yeah.
And he left the touring to the other guys. So that's kind of a similar thing.
Mm-hmm.
I can't really think of an example. The only thing is like maybe the 13 tour for Black Sabbath. Like I think Ward was on the album, but he didn't tour, obviously. Yeah, can't really think of many examples.
I don't think he was on that record.
Was it? I don't know.
I don't remember.
Somebody fact check that. Oh, fuck.
I don't know. But point is, yeah. So it's a bit of a weird collaboration, but it makes sense. 'Cause again, he has to run Epitaph. So, but yes, but he was back still writing for the band again. It was kind of back to the old, because before Greg was just writing from like the Grey Lace and the previous 3 albums in Atlantic. Greg wrote all by himself. So I think he was just like, he's like, I can't do this anymore. Yeah. So
let's talk. Sorry, go ahead.
And yeah, so he was happy to have him back, and that kind of all led to this record. It was kind of considered a comeback record by many people, including me, from the often maligned Atlantic Years era, especially the latter part of that time. So
they did get a huge upgrade in rhythm as well.
Oh,
let's have a quick conversation about Brooks Wackerman for a second.
I believe he was in Suicidal Tendencies before this. Not that that mattered, because everyone was probably in Suicidal Tendencies at some point. But yeah, I think he was in that and another band, I want to say, and he joined them starting with this record. I think he was in Tenacious D during his time there too.
But he's a classically trained jazz drummer.
He is,
which is a little overkill for a punk band.
Holy crap, this is easily the best drummer the band ever had. And I was kind of sad when he left, because man, you just made this band just so much more insane during this period of time. This is a real like return to form for this band. From I think the last album was New America, and yeah, he's a great addition to this band. And I gotta ask, what do you guys think of this record?
I really like it. It's a clear return to the hardcore roots. Fast. It reminds me a lot of No Control. Yeah, like you said, first album back on Epitaph, first album with Brooks. Just so many upgrades in this. Is so much a return to form, and it got a good Billboard spot too at number 49. So it just shows that this doesn't really matter for a punk band, but like, that shows like this was the fans received it well, and they got a lot of new fans from this record too, which I think kind of ushered in a new generation.
I think it was around this time, either before or after, they were opening for Blink-182 on their tours, which, as someone who hates the nasal tones of Tom DeLonge with an unhealthy obsession, makes me a little angry that they were ever curtain jerking for Blink-182, but I think Greg has also said that is this time they were getting new fans or exposures. I mean, though, a new generation for them, pretty much, of new fans.
That's kind of the perfect opportunity, because you see Bad Religion and then you get to leave before having to hear Blink-182.
But then you only get a 30-minute set, though. That's the thing.
That's true.
But then all the songs are like 2 minutes. So you can still hear like 15 songs. So
right now, 30 minutes would feel like an eternity, considering the dearth of live music we've had in the last year plus.
True. So
that would be nice. Anyway, let's play a song. Andrew, why don't you go first?
Sure. So overall, I know a lot of fans like this record. I think generally this is the most liked, maybe the one that followed this record. I think the most liked records from Gruett's second return. I like it a lot too. It's not among my absolute favorites, but I do like that they were again trying to do some stuff a little differently with the structures. But the one song that really stands out to me, as far as them trying to do something different, it's one of their last great mid-tempo tracks, is The Defense. I absolutely love The Defense. It has this really cool sound. Why don't you go ahead and play for that, Ben?
Channels, but there's nothing on my high-speed connections monitored daily by the Pentagon. These things are seldom what they seem. I'm not inclined to enjoy my dream. Won't go away. No
Yeah, you can just tell the return to form there. It's like they're hearkening back to No Control. They're hearkening back to, Against the Grain and stuff like that. It feels just like Brett's back in the band. Let's just have like a good time. You know what I mean? You can tell there's fun that was put into this record. I don't know.
Yeah.
What's the song you want to play from this record?
I would like to play Broken, simply because this is the first time I've heard an acoustic guitar in a Bad Religion song, and I think it needs to be pointed out. God damn it.
I think two Babies in a Dark.
We're gonna hear another
song.
acoustic guitar on one of my picks later.
Okay.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. So.
She was barely a teen, hanging out in between, just a part of the scene. With mercurial smile and incurable style, she was only a dream. How's that? He didn't know a thing about making love to the kind of girl you read about. He said, I'm bound to be broken. My daddy bet that I'd amount to nothing. He won't let anybody show him anything. He was a troubled child, had been down for a while, always kept to
Just
himself.
a little different flavor there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This record's not all mid-tempo though. Supersonic, I think, is one of the fiercest, awesome
Oh, yeah.
opening tracks they ever had. I love it. Kyoto Now is good too, and as is the single Sorrow. Yeah, this is. Hey, if you want something a little different, now you're not quite to the level of Generator, to go to Process of Belief. This is a solid record to go to.
I agree. I think this is the last one on our further listening.
Yes, no, follow-ups.
Follow-ups, correct.
Yes, we have one more in this tier, then we'll move on, I promise. We're going all the way to 2013 for their album True North. This is their second most recent studio record.
Was this the album that was out by the time you and I first heard Bad Religion, like 2013, 2014?
I don't know if I had heard them in 2013, but this is right around the time when they got it. I had missed out on the release of this. I didn't know who Bad Religion was then, really. Maybe a little bit, but yeah, I wasn't aware that this album was being released. When I got into them, I just saw that it was there. I was like, oh, okay. True North. This is this is kind of right before a lot of band members depart, so it is kind of unfortunate in that sense that it's the last album that features Brooks Wackerman and Greg Heston actually too, but that's okay because they really make this a really solid record. It's weird because there was a record that was released before this in 2010, yet this album feels like their big response to the 2008-2009 Great Recession. Right. With songs like Land of Endless Greed and Department of False Hope and
Robin Hood in Reverse.
Robin Hood in Reverse, of course. There's just a lot of very poignant, just direct attacks on the rich of this country. It's it's a really strong album, and I really like it for that. And one of the most Bad Religion things ever, they even analyzed the term "fuck you" in an intellectual way. I mean, I can't think of a more punk Bad Religion thing
Big
ever.
brain shit right there.
That is some big brain stuff indeed.
I like this album too. This unfortunately is where I start to see some decline, some true decline. It's weird because this band has such a strange arc. It has these phases going up and down depending on who's in the band at the time, what political landscape is happening. No other factors like that really affect another band in the same way. But I really do enjoy the singles off this one, and I also my favorite song would be Crisis Time, just for some solid environmental.
It's a really underrated track.
Want to play a little bit?
Sure. Go ahead.
Yeah, it's interesting to kind of mention their arc in terms of quality. I think this is their last peak for me because I really like this album a lot. Like I think after Process, it really even starting at Process, kind of like there is this weird like they're kind of dips in the Atlantic years. They kind of came back up with Process, but not as high as they once did for me at least. Just not quite. And then it was kind of the slow decline in overall quality of these records. But True North, I think overall seems as a really solid peak. This is my personal favorite record post Gruett's second return. I think because of all like the response to the Great Recession and everything. I think this album has just a lot going for it. I think the hooks are really solid. That's like I think one of not the only time Brett sings lead. It's Dharma and the Bomb. It's a weird track, but I kind of like it. This record's just a solid Bad Religion record.
Yeah, I think it is too. I want to open up a bigger discussion before we move on and start busting through like these last category here. Because, like I said, the main thesis of this episode, I think, is labeling an album Bad Religion just being Bad Religion a good or bad thing, right? And as I was researching for this episode, I saw I read a lot of reviews, all of which pretty much came from punk fanzines, forums, blogs, stuff like that. And all of them pretty much gave positive reviews, right? Because these are fans reviewing their favorite record. I don't see a lot of like contrary opinions when we get into this era of Bad Religion, or pretty much any era after that golden run.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Do you think that causes any sort of problems?
That's in terms of how like the band like responds and how they write records,
and just how like there's sort of this domination of fan reviews. There's not really anyone looking critically at these records.
And that's interesting. I know, for instance, Fantano. I think he actually briefly, like in like a weird video once, he actually did talk about this record when it came out, and he said he wasn't really for it because he's just not it's just not the kind of punk music he listens to. He's just not even really a big Bad Religion fan in general. Mm-hmm. So, and I agree, because I think there are a lot of criticisms with some of these later records. In fact, the one that precedes this, I have some qualms about. Probably the harshest you'll hear me talk about Bad Religions on that record. But this record, I mean, to me, I will agree. And maybe there is some, obviously, 'cause with bands like Bad Religion, I don't think people have really cared about much since the 90s. And it's overall in general, I mean, I know Pitchfork gave like Process of Belief 5.7, which is a little harsh, but whatever. Yeah, you're right. I think people now it's kind of view Bad Religion as like their own niche. It's kind of the fans that are reviewing it, and maybe that does kind of stifle any sort of creativity or any real positive, like really any real harsh criticism. I could see that. At the same time, though, and kind of going back to the idea of whether or not like it's okay for just to have a Bad Religion record, for them not to move on from sounds. I mean, again, I think what your thoughts on that is just gonna depends on what you want as a music fan or as a punk fan. Again, for me, I love this band so much. I love their sound, everything they do. I'm okay getting a Bad Religion record every time. I completely understand though when that might be an issue for other people. I regularly say, I'll be the first one to admit, all their songs are pretty similar. They're not like a one-trick pony per se, but they do hammer this kind of same thing over and over again.
There's also this way of thinking too, like very rarely do you get a band that sticks around for this long, especially a punk band, keeping the name going for, dude, it's almost 40 years.
Well, it's been 40 years.
It's past 40 years this band has been together in some shape or form. In a way, I can see how a lot of fans would feel like they earn the freedom to be free of true harsh artistic criticism because they've kind of adapted the sound, and they're it kind of goes back to Greg's quote about like music's not going to change the world, but it can change a small group of people. And I think since True North and some albums before that, they've been specifically writing for their group of people. Mm-hmm. They've been writing for you.
Yeah, I think that's a great way of putting it. Do you guys think you want to say about that?
Yeah, I'm really trying to gather my thoughts on this because the band that I always think about in this discussion, even more than the Ramones, is AC/DC. Mm-hmm. Like the last 20 or 30 years of AC/DC's music, you put on any album and
it's them just trying to recreate Back in Black.
You're pretty sure what you're going to get, There's going to be some like sexual innuendo. There's going to be some hard rock and stuff. There might be one slow song, but even that's rare. It's like, I don't know. I mean, it's kind of a formulaic approach to making music almost, which I could see how that could turn people off. But then again, it's like, I think about the show Mystery Science Theater 3000, where it's like they hit exactly what they were like, we're going to make fun of movies, and these are the kind of movies we're going to do, and these are the kind of jokes we have. And they let it roll for like 10 seasons, and now they've come back for 2 more. And it's like, if you hit on a winning formula and you can recreate that with variations and success as you go, and you like the stuff that you're making and the fans like the stuff that you're making, then I don't think that there's anything wrong with that. I mean, we've even heard King Giz is one of the modern bands that has like the most variation from album to album, and their last 2 have varied somewhat on the formula, but like it still sounds a lot like some of their older stuff. You know, they have their hallmarks too. So it's just like I don't know if there's necessarily a problem with it. I think it's just a certain sort of atmosphere that some bands fall into, especially hard rock and punk and heavy metal bands who have been around for a long time. The fans know what they want. The band knows what the fans want. The band knows what they want to make. And it just sort of happens that way. It's like a little self-contained ecosystem.
Right.
And I don't even know if it's fair for... it's kind of grading on a curve almost. I don't know if it would be fair for Pitchfork to take a look at the most recent AC/DC album and say, this is horrible because it sounds like AC/DC, or it sounds like everything else they've ever done, because that's just what they do.
Do you think that makes it easier or more difficult for people to get into the band when they don't divert their sound as much? Because sometimes people want a band that has a ton of different colors. They can put on an album that fits a certain mood. Bad Religion, you got to be in a certain mood to listen to most of their stuff.
Yeah, you know, and I think it just comes down to the individual. I really do. I mean, like, for someone like me, I do like experimentation. I do like when band changes up their sound, but I don't always need that. I not to the same extent, but Dinosaur Jr. also kind of falls in the same respect. They're definitely not a one-trick pony, but you can a lot of their albums do blend together, and I don't mind that. I really like how Dinosaur Jr. sounds. As long as they're writing, good material, they have good riffs, they have good lyrics, they have whatever, I'm fine with it.
Yeah, I'd put Dino in like the middle of the spectrum, where it's like Bad Religion, it's like, it's sort of the one song thing. It's like they have one song and I like it a lot. With Dino, it's like their stuff changes a pretty variable amount.
They got like 5 songs.
Right, but it's like, when you hear it, you know it's Dinosaur Jr.
Right.
Like from the voice, from the way the guitars sound, from the way they're played, And
right? With a band, especially like a band like Bad Religion, it's been around for so long. I mean, hell, as long as they're still happy writing the material they are, which I think they are. I mean, that's what I've much like gathered. But then, again, if you have fans, I mean, like, pleasing fans, isn't that like kind of what a band's supposed to do? At least sometimes. I mean, I always feel like a band should like pursue any artistic endeavor that they want. I'm not saying fans should not be the end all be all of it, but if that's what they want to do, I mean, I don't see any fault to that either.
Yeah. So I guess to sort of close my thoughts on it, I'm gonna say I am totally cool with this sort of atmosphere surrounding a band as long as the band is in on it. If the band is happy making what they're making, then that's cool. If it's just fan service, that's when I get a little iffy. But I don't. That's not what Bad Religion is doing.
No, absolutely not. They're enjoying what they're doing. We saw that when we saw them live.
Yeah, absolutely.
Now we're
going
getting
on to the further listening. This is the stuff. Everything you've heard before is stuff I highly recommend. This stuff is stuff that, like, it's still good, but it's not going to please everyone. And we're gonna go all the way back to the very beginning of their career,
and we're gonna be bussing.
We're going to be talking about the debut.
Oh, Michael's setting a timer, everyone. It's serious now.
All right, here we go. All right, so How Could Hell Be Any Worse? Released in 1982. Thank you. Again, 81, they recorded it. 82, they released it. This is a hard one to rank because they were like teenagers when they wrote this and they produced it and made it. You talk about grading on a curve. You almost feel like you kind of have to do it with this one. It's the first album. You hear bits and pieces of the sound that they would go on to, but this sounds a lot like a lot of the other like really lo-fi, dirty, grimy, punk music you were hearing from the LA scene at the time. And this is very akin to that. There are a certain sect of punk fans who will say this is their favorite record because they're more into the hardcore sound, the more lo-fi stuff. They're not really much the skate punk stuff. Yeah. So,
and guess what? I'm one of them. I personally love this record, and I think it's placed a little low, but obviously this is a more objective take. It's just refreshing to come to this and hear punk that I'm used to.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
And it deserves to be a little higher in my book. It's unfiltered. It's angsty.
So again, when I put tiers for this record. I wasn't trying to do it just simply in quality. It's like, if someone is going to get into this band, what would they gravitate to more? And honestly, this one, because for me, the production has really always held this one back for me from like enjoying it so much, because the cymbals are loud as hell. It's mixed terribly. The like compression is awful. Everything's kind of distorted. I like how dirty and cool the guitar sound, but like everything just kind of gets washed out, especially because of the cymbals. Greg, fun, like he's fun on this. He has some really he's this really bratty, snotty, teenaged, angst thing that's just pissed off at everything in the world. It's great, but it's certainly nowhere near as refined as what he would become. So this isn't really the best. Not only is this not like accessible in that respect, but it's just also not a great representation of the band and what their overall sound has become.
Yes.
So, which is why I put it down
That's
here.
true.
I still really like this record. Despite its faults, I mean, it has its charm. I think that's the best way to put it.
What would you say is your favorite song?
I mean, Ben wants to play it, so whatever. I'll let him do that. But a song I always coming back to is White Trash Second Generation. I mean, listen, this is a very angsty record. This is far more angsty than a lot of their other stuff in terms of the lyrical content. And with songs like Fuck Armageddon, This Is Hell, Oligarchy, Damn to Be Free, it's definitely you can hear the teenageness in this, which is I always appreciated. But Ben, what song did you want to play?
Oh, well, I wanted to play specifically sort of the bridge of my favorite song from this record, which I think is the opener, We're Only Gonna Die. In this bridge, you kind of hear, you hear an acoustic guitar, and you also hear like some electric piano.
Yeah.
And what it brings to mind to me is, and I have to sort of cue it up while I'm talking here, is it sounds like there's kind of a 60s garage influence almost. It reminds me a lot of Sky Saxon's band, The Seeds. There's just sort of there's like a minor psychedelic element to it almost. I like when the band kind of slows down here and
Are you sure you're not thinking about Damn
up.
to Be Free?
No, I'm thinking of this. It's not like psychedelic, like whoa, like crazy, but sort of that period of time. Like it's very like California psych with the electric piano, especially. So yeah.
That is a great track.
It is.
I don't know if mine can beat that, but the only final thoughts I have on this record is I think records like these are essential to understanding a band, understanding where they're coming from. You can hear all the influences on this one.
Yeah.
So in that respect, I would recommend people go back just to get
absolutely.
the historical context.
And the only kind of people I would recommend to come to this one early is if they're already into that 80s punk stuff. So
yes. But here's my fave, Voice of God is Government.
Neighbors, no one loves you like he loves you. And no one cares like he cares. Neighbors, let us join today in the holy love of God and money. Because neighbors, no one loves you like he loves you. And what better way to show your love than to dig deep into your pockets? Dig real deep and give until it hurts. Alleviate your guilt. Free yourself once again because he gave to you, brothers and sisters. Please give a $10, $25, or $50 tax-deductible donation, and I assure you your modest pledge will be used to censor TV and radio, ban questionable books, and contribute to many other godly services. No longer will young Christian Americans hedonistically indulge in masochistic submission to rhythmic music, or with your monetary support, there is no end to what we can achieve in this country. The voice of God is government. The voice of The voice of God is
Yeah. There's your suicidal tendency song for the day.
Yeah.
Because
But
it
then
essentially is.
Yeah, and then it just kicks right in, and yeah, it's great.
fantastic.
You know, and again, to round it up, I still like this record, even though, again, returning to it with the production, and honestly, they're not quite full understanding of harmonies and melodies quite yet. kind of pulls me back from it. Although, if you're like, if that's an issue you have, definitely go check out like later live releases of songs like "We're Only Gonna Die" and Part 3, which
Ooh,
is
yeah.
their punk rock take on dueling banjos. It's a seriously, Part 3, like. When they actually know how to do melody, like later live releases, it's so much more emotionally impactful. It's so great. But yeah, how can it be worse? A very humble and solid debut for this record.
I agree.
For this band. Sorry.
Let's move on to possibly this belongs to the trio of Bad Religion albums that I will never ever listen to again.
Oh, well, that's a shame. I
Yeah.
really like this one. We're going to talk about The Gray Race here, the second record released on Atlantic Records in '96. And the first one to, I think, the first record ever in the band's entire discography to not feature, apart from like the EP they had in the mid-'80s, Back to the Known, to not feature Brett Gurewitz, because he had left by this point. There's just a lot of conflicting reports to no, not conflicting. There's a couple reasons why he left, but like the main one that we all know about, that they've spoken at length about, is the fact that Brett suddenly had to take care of these million, record-selling bands on Epitaph Records, like The Offspring, and he's like, I can't tour and do Bad Religion while doing this. I can't. Because it was just a tiny label at this point, and it just kind of took him by surprise.
But Andrew, Brett hated Jay. It was totally a band feud.
I haven't even heard these rumors.
Yes, that's something.
Greg was not happy with Brett though leaving. He was angry because they were partners or songwriting partners, and so his idea is like, well, I'm gonna write to become we're make this band just as good without Brett. And this record he kind of did that. The following two, not so much.
Yeah.
But I really like The Gray Race. This is actually my favorite Atlantic record. Record released on Atlantic. And not every song is perfect. There are some things that have aged kind of funny in retrospect, like 10 in 2010, with the idea being that, what are we going to do when the population reaches 10 billion people in 2010, when we're like in 2021 and hasn't even reached 8 billion yet. But silly, the title, but like the song, the message matches of itself still kind of holds up. But, I don't know. There's it is really interesting to hear an entire Greg Graffin written, album. It is interesting. I think he did a pretty good job, all things considering. There are a lot of songs I love that I think are really underrated, like Cease, Drunk Sincerity, Pity the Dead. Honestly, this record's really solid all throughout. And the one that I really want to play is another song that's age unfortunately very, very well, is the second to last track, Come Join Us, which is which it probably almost just seems like how probably like a textbook and how hate groups and other things kind of like recruit their members. It kind of talks about like how, hey, you're suffering here. Well, hey, if you come join us, we'll treat you well. And it's so creepy in the way they write it, but it's done so well. It's just a great track. Ben to play that right now.
So you say you gotta know why the world goes around, and you can't find the truth in the things you found, and you're scared shitless cause evil abounds. Come join us. Well, I heard you were looking for a place to fit in, for a veteran people with the same objective, a family to cling to and call brethren. Come join us. All we wanna do is change your mind. All you need to do is close your eyes. Come join us. Come join us. Come join us. Don't you see all the trouble that most people are in, and that they just want you for the run of it?
I think it's a big step up in production too, from Stranger Than Fiction. So, yeah, I don't know. Also, first album to feature Brian Baker, I should say.
Yeah.
But why aren't you as big on this record, Michael?
It's pretty simple. I did like that track, Come Join Us. That's one of my faves. But it seems like this album had a subliminal message from Greg to Brett, which I don't like. I don't like that bitterness. I like it in Dinosaur Jr. Don't like it in Bad Religion.
And I agree. I've heard like rumors that like because I should also, I forgot to mention, Brett was also really struggling with drug addiction at this point. I think he even was like arrested because he got really into heroin, and I think he was even arrested at one point. He spent some time in jail.
And they changed the lyrics to some of the song while on tour to make fun of Brett's addiction.
That I've heard. It's one of the few things I've heard, like rumors that I've heard that really that I really don't like.
Yeah,
Brett
and aside from that, I don't like the new take on production. There's just nothing new. I don't really like Drunk Sincerity. I don't like Victory. I think they're both pretty boring. And Baker's addition on this album is totally underutilized. You have the guitarist of Dag Nasty, and you are just like having him play bar chords.
I know. And that's something, I don't think it sucks because, I mean, Baker would continue on with the band. He's still with them. But it's like, to me, like, they always utilize Brett and Greg Heston so well together, in terms of dueling guitars and whatnot. It doesn't really, that is a really fair point. They don't really utilize them very well in this one, and it is a shame.
But that's just my opinion. I think if Andrew recommends it, go check it out.
Yeah, I mean, again, like I said, this is kind of meant to, like, this actually is meant to, like, once you've heard everything else, if you're like we've heard so far, go check it out. Any thoughts, Ben, before we move on?
Nope.
Okay.
2004.
So guys, real quick, I do have to start with a question here with this record.
Yeah.
The Empire Strikes First, 2004. I'm gonna ask this because I don't know how clear it was when listening to this record, but I just gotta ask to make sure you guys know we're on the same page. This might shock you, but this record, you guys know this was released during the Bush administration, right? Yes. I know that was a really subtle thing with this record, but yeah, this was released during the Bush administration. So actually, technically, this is the second record released under Bush. Process of Belief was 2, but this is the second record post Bruce Breckenridge coming back, and you can very clearly tell that they were very not happy with the religious right coming back and the Iraq War. You definitely heard a lot of references to that war on here, as well as. Especially, it reminds me a lot of the debut because there's a lot of songs, very overt songs against the religious right. Very like some of the most poignant ever, like Sinister Rouge, which we played earlier, Atheist Peace, All There Is, God's Love. Such great, especially for me, who was just becoming an atheist in high school. I just cherish those songs so much. I love them. However, I will say this is one of the few times where this band does kind of enter into political cringe. Do it, not the worst example, no, not by any stretch, but with songs like The Empire Strikes First and the weird rap part with Let Them Eat War, it's, this record has its faults. I think it's solid overall. A lot of fans seem to like this one, and I used to as well, but I'm not as high on this record as I was back in high school. What do you guys think?
I definitely agree. I think it should be placed slightly higher, definitely above Gray Race for me. But I like some of the nods to like George Orwell. There's some 1984 stuff in there, which I think is cool. But yeah, this and then their latest album is the instances where like we were talking about earlier, it becomes like dumbed down and cringeworthy, the political messages, and it's like, where's the Bad Religion that uses this awesome vocabulary to express these beautiful points? I just don't get it on this record.
Yeah, I would say the actual politics, I agree. Religion, I think they do a good job. Politics, not so much. I like Let Them Eat War because it was really one of the few anti-war tracks we actually got during the Iraq War, because it wasn't like Vietnam, because I think everyone was still like reeling from 9/11. No one really wanted to, I guess, make anti-war tracks, especially after the Dixie Chicks. So it was nice of them to have it there, but yeah, I don't know what the hell that rap part was in the beginning. It's always bothered me. Los Angeles is Burning.
That's a good song.
It's a good song, and but it's a little too radio friendly for me personally. Again, if you really want some nice social commentary, Sinister Rouge and I'd say All There Is are probably going to be your best bets. Do you have any thoughts on this one, Ben?
No, I'm kind of tapped out at this point, honestly.
That's fair enough.
Let's play a song.
So we already played Sinister Rouge earlier, so I will. What song did I have down?
Atheist Peace.
Atheist Peace. This is just Peace High School me. I love this track so much, and I love because they have like some horns in here. It sounds really cool. So why don't you go ahead and play that?
My grandma would smack you over the head if she heard that.
Well, hey, you should see what you're wearing right now, buddy.
I know.
Let's
move on.
We're gonna move on.
Worst record. Calling it right now.
All
Worst
right,
record.
I figured as much. Although I don't know. There's a couple ones I'd put under. So okay, Descent of Man. Okay, 2010's Descent of Man. Now, if I was being objective, I probably should have just left this one out. I couldn't because my God, this is such a weird one for me because I think this is an incredibly mixed bag when it comes to their discography. As far as the songs on here, I think half these tracks are like some of my absolute favorite from their entire discography. And I think are some of the most underrated songs from here. The other half is just mid-tempo filler, and it just makes listening through this whole record a bit of a slog. I put it on this record. I put this record in this tier list not so much to highlight the whole record, but to highlight the songs that I think are really, really solid that I think people should go check out. That would include The Day They Are Stalled, Only Rain, The Resistance, Meeting of the Minds, Someone to Believe, and the song that I want to play, Avalon. We want to play that again real quick. Oddly, because I haven't really touched it much, but this band can, especially on their earlier stuff, can get very pessimistic and very nihilistic, and it's an oddly I'm not gonna say upbeat, just kind of positive, oddly optimistic song for the band, which I appreciate.
Yeah.
But this record, I bring this up to only as this is a grab bag record.
Sure.
So take what you want from it, and my biggest criticism is this was written and released in 2010, but there aren't a lot of references to the Great Recession. You think that would have been perfect for this band. We got more of that on the next record. Apart from The Day the Earth Stalled, maybe, and Meeting of the Minds, you don't really get much of that, which kind of bothers me. But what else do you have to say about this, Michael?
Andrew, I've known you for a long time. We've done this show for a long time. Mm-hmm. These last two records are when I'm going to unload.
That's fair.
Yeah. This is. I hope that's fair to you. But this is the father of all in Bad Religion's discography.
Whoa, okay,
Mm-hmm.
No.
It's so sterilized to it's almost like alt rock, power pop. It still soars. It's got the harmony.
I
it's
really
got
like
the Bad
how
Religion
operatic
thing.
this album sounds at times.
I don't.
But that's fair. That's fair enough.
Yeah, I think there's nothing new, nothing exciting. Cyanide fucking sucks.
Does. I agree.
Very corny.
I hate it too. I agree. Cyanide is. I don't know why they made that a single. I think they made that. No, Devil. I don't know if that one was a single, but Devil and Citrus is, and I also don't really get that one.
Yeah. That's about it. I'm gonna leave it there because I could go on more rants, but I think every band has this album. It's gonna happen.
And again, my tolerance of this might just come from the fact that I'm a huge fan of this band. So
Yes.
Yeah, I feel that with Bob Dylan.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This is the Bob Dylan religious era degree of
Sure. I wouldn't say that. But I would say that
No,
one
there's
of
still
their
good
weakest
music on
albums
there.
comes with this one.
Yes.
So okay, so this is an interesting one for me. The last album we're gonna talk about, the most recent one from 2019.
Yes.
This record's weird for me. It's the only Bad Religion release proper that I got to actually kind of live the hype through. And I will say I was very, very nervous about this record when it came out because they released a single in 2018 called "The Kids Are Alt-Right." And if you haven't heard it, don't. I'm gonna tell you that now. Don't. It's terrible. It has this weird swing rhythm to it. and it just sounds so off kilter, and they just certainly did not intend for this, but no one knows, especially the old guard of punk. No one seems to know how to criticize Trump correctly.
No.
One
Yeah,
could.
you and I have talked about that.
It's ridiculous to me that it just seems so hard for so many people. They just want to go for the cringiest, silliest ways to do it. And this record, this song in particular, was really odd, to a point where I've heard that, like, certain sects of the alt-right starting to use that track, ironically or maybe even unironically, as an anthem, which
Yikes.
that's a big yikes. So no, then luckily though, I think they realized their mistake. Did not include that in this record, but not to say I was still not concerned. There was a song on the track when they released the track list. I saw a song called "Do the Paranoid Style," and I was like, "Oh, that's gonna suck. That's gonna suck." And those behold, it does. It's also has a weird swing thing to it, but it's so. Oh, I was like, oh god, they're gonna go into political cringe. And listen, this album has its fair share of that. But I was relatively pleased with this, especially at least as a fan of this band. I got a good bunch of songs that I liked. But yeah, to say this record has its flaws is a bit of an understatement, let's say.
Cool
what
album
you guys
cover,
think of
though.
this?
I think the album cover is really cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, the album cover's cool. I'll give you that.
I
mean, that's like, yeah, that's not saying much, but for a late era punk band to have a really cool album cover.
The last Adolescence record was literally just like a cartoon drawing of Trump walking in front of a bunch of people with like a stink trail, and everyone's like got their face scrunched up. It's horrible.
Listen, I think there's a huge conversation to be had about just punk's utter failure to capture the Trump era. I think we could talk about that for a long time.
At least with the old guard, I would say.
Yes,
Definitely.
absolutely. I think a lot of the political songs that centered around the Trump era belonged to the minority communities.
Yeah, it was more of
definitely.
hip hop's moment.
Yes, it's hip hop's moment
yeah.
for
Definitely.
political. But I think this album is great because it's funny. It's funny how cringy it is. I don't know if that serves as
it makes me sad, honestly, though.
Yeah, what
For
a
me,
sad
it's an
note to
opposite.
end on.
It makes me sad because this is the band I love, especially I hold so highly lyrically. But yeah, and you get songs like My Sanity. It has that really awful. I mean, it's fine overall, except the line where he goes like, "An alternative facts snuck in like a fiend," makes me just wince and cry every time.
Yeah.
It's
Is
like
there any, Andrew, is there any good song from this album?
Yes, I will say, apart from the odd Russiagate track, Big Black Dog, which sucks, and where he's asking who your daddy is on Candidate, there are a couple tracks that do it right. Age of Unreasons, the title track's really good. Faces of Grief is this really cool throwback to punk rock. What Tomorrow Brings, that's a great album closer. But easily the best song on this record is the opener, Chaos from Within. One of the singles for this record, and how you should write a song in the age of Trump. This is how you write a good anti-Trump track. It's forward. That's my dad calling. He can wait. Is that your dad's punk band? No, but no. That is straightforward, to the point, and not cringy. That's all I ask for these songs about Trump and his fucking politics, is to not make it cringy. And Chaos from Within is a great example of them doing it well. Let's hear it.
Cowering like settlers on someone else's land, mistaking advances of the natives who have come to lend a hand. It's a sad and pathetic badge of shame, my friends. Terror always seems to win in the drama of human motivation, where is restraint and reason. Try to search it, existential, with patience wearing thin, but the danger's elemental. It's chaos from within. The foxing leaves of civilization.
I'm sorry. I was just playing that. I was looking at that album cover again. It's so cool. I don't know what it is. I just love it so much.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, and it kind of rounded up again, like The Descent of Man. Age of Unreason's an album I think you'll have to kind of listen to yourself and pick what you like and don't like. But, I mean, I mean, overall, I think the reason why I'm kinder to this record than you are, Michael, is because this is the one album I got to be hyped for, and it was a very special memory because this was released in 2019, literally the day of last day of exams, where I got to move out of my apartment sophomore year and go home, and as a special treat after a really stressful, that was an awful semester. We had 6 snow days and everything was just being jammed at the end. It's a really stressful time, and as a lovingly treat, I got a new album from my favorite band. So, I think
it's clearly an important phone call.
my dad. Okay, you can wait. So overall, yeah, no, it's a really special record to me. So because of that,
and you should feel that. I mean, I had something that happened like that 2 days ago. A Dinosaur Jr.'s new record came out, and it was the same day I got interviewed for the EIC position, and I got that, and it was the anthem of my victory.
Yeah,
it was pretty cool.
Mm-hmm. So and also the tour for this record, they finally came back to Michigan after not coming for 6 years, and you and I got to see them together.
And it was a fantastic time.
It was, except when they played Do the Paranoid Style. Never play that song again live, man, please. And with that kind of ends up with the kind of the last tier we're going to really talk about in full. I already mentioned the other records. If you like everything you've heard, I would recommend New Massive Hell, but it's just kind of a often just forgotten record in their discography, so whatever. But there is one song I want to play.
Yes.
So I mentioned the second record a couple times, and there's a special reason why it has this legacy. It's not on Spotify. It's been out of print for ever, pretty much. Well, Ben, would you like to play the listeners who may not be familiar with this track and what they might hear from the album Into the Unknown?
What's the song, Andrew?
It's called It's Only Over When, which will be whenever you stop playing it. So I think I actually brought this up on our Guilty Pleasures playlist because, this is the second record. They were really just, brief summary, they were really just pessimistic, we'll never be as successful as the first record. And so they were Brett and Greg decided, screw it, we don't need to take this seriously. They got a keyboard. They made a prog punk record. I'd like to repeat that. They made a progressive punk rock album with synths and everything.
Honestly, I'd heard a second of that stuff before. Unironically, that is fucking awesome.
I knew you were going to say that.
I loved that.
And here's the thing. I love it too. I love this album too. Not love is a strong word. I wouldn't say that. But more ironically than you. But it's something about this record I really like because it's an important record for them. Because this is where they really started to use 3-part harmonies. This is really where Greg became more of a refined vocalist. And it was still catchy. I think a lot of what they ended up using in their sound later is on this record.
Yeah.
It's also just goofy and silly and ridiculous. There's so much cringy Greenpeace style lyrics on here. The production's awful because they recorded this in a punk studio and they're not they're good musicians but not good enough for prog music, and they got a rhythm section because Jay and the drummer left at just the sight of this new shit.
Right.
I love it. This is the most fascinating record I've ever heard about because it's just such a dramatic difference. Remember the songs we play from How Can It Only Be Worse? They went from that to that stuff.
Yeah, that sounds like if you crossed punk with Boston or something.
Yeah. Michael, why do you hate this?
You mean, why do I love this? My favorite track probably from this, I didn't get a chance to listen to it all the way through, but Time and Disregard, major Jethro Tull vibes.
It's like the 7-minute long one.
7 minute long.
Okay.
It's like it's a 4-part movement. There's acoustic guitars. There's like piano all over it.
Yeah.
I haven't listened to it yet, but I think from hearing that and from hearing you just say Jethro Tull vibes, I can almost guarantee you this is going to be my favorite Bad Religion album.
I hate you so much, but yes. Listen, I still like it. This is often, like, most fans hate this album, as you could imagine.
But Andrew, this is the proof that Bad Religion did experiment with their sound.
I know this. There's like an ironic twist to this, but before we like really wrap things up, I wanted to ask. I had this thought like right at the start of recording, which feels like a year ago now.
Sorry.
That's okay. Do you think that this and like the negative fan reception to this, which is obviously a big creative risk, turned them off from experimenting more?
That could be it, because I think one of the other key factors with that album is that they just ran away from it. Like, again, you can't find this, and they've only reissued it once as part of like a big box set they did a couple years ago, and that's like things ridiculously expensive now. But
yeah,
they've never put it on CD. The original cassette and vinyl copies of this album are really just go for huge stupid prices on like Discogs, because they're just it is kind of almost like the Atari ET like version of a punk album. It's like they want everyone to forget about it kind of thing, but which is a shame, because I actually really want this on Spotify. We need to start like a Snyder Cut style movement to get Into the Unknown onto Spotify, but
sure.
That could very well be it. I think this band was like, they really like punk music, and I think they were just so nihilistic. That's why they did this huge jump in sound. And I think, perhaps maybe because the reception of that, because it almost killed the band. They were like, maybe we should just kind of stick to what we know. I don't know.
Right. Yeah, I don't know, but I mean, do we want to just kind of wrap up?
Yeah, I mean, in total, what have you guys thought about this journey that we just went on?
What have we learned?
What have we learned
today?
And are you guys Bad Religion fans now?
I'd like you to start.
Okay,
Ben.
well, I was less immersed in the discography than Michael. But I do have to say, I think I found a lot more depth here than I first expected. Like, it was definitely a band where I knew the iconography, and I was just like, punk band, whatever. But, like, this is punk music made by really intelligent people. And I think that there's something to be said for that. A lot of times, if you think about punk rock music, you think about snotty lyrics and just, like, goofy, funny stuff and whatever, Yeah. But there's really a lot of depth here, and it's kind of hidden. When you think of even the Dead Kennedys, like, they're being funny, but they're obviously smart, and they're like have all these takes on different political situations, and it's very clear right from the outset. And with Bad Religion, that sits back a little bit more. It's kind of like, just because the lyrics are so complex, you really have to dig in to really understand what's going on. But I think, I mean, I enjoyed it all. I don't know if I'd say I was a fan, but I'm also so removed from this moment right now with my musical taste. Like, I've been listening to country and bluegrass mostly, so like
you should check out his solo stuff.
I mean, I really
That's pretty
like
much all it is.
I like this guy's way of writing, so I would really enjoy hearing his take on stuff like that.
Yeah.
What about you, Michael?
Here's my take. Going to be a little poetic. This episode has changed my perception on music. And I'll explain why. Experimentation is so important to me, especially since I've come to college and have listened to more experimental music. It's become kind of a hallmark of how I choose what bands to listen to. Were they groundbreaking? Did they do something new? Did they change their sound? It's important to me, and it's always going to be important to me. And as I look back on my musical history, I've noticed that has been a key factor all throughout. Before meeting you, Andrew, I would think like a band like this really doesn't have a place in pop culture, because there's just nothing new. They're providing nothing new. However, after watching interviews of Gaffin, listening how much you respect this band and love them, learning about how music can just be written for a small group of people, and it doesn't matter if it sounds the same over and over again, because that one song changes people's lives. That's really important. And now I have respect for not only Bad Religion, but bands like Bad Religion. And you have done that, Andrew.
Yeah.
Would you say you were a fan?
Yes.
You're gonna make me tear up, Michael.
Well, on that tip, I must say, after this episode especially, before it, but definitely after it, I will never, whenever I see that Crossbuster logo, I think I'll have a smile on my face, and I'll think of you, Andrew.
You guys are gonna make me cry. No, no tears. Tears are for the last episode.
Yeah, save that for the last episode.
But no, just to kind of wrap this up, I mean, I do. I mean, everyone knows I love this band, so I just want to say thank you to you two for putting up with me, for doing this episode. It really means a lot to me. I haven't, my girlfriend's been getting into the band over the years, but for the longest time, I really just haven't had an outlet to just spew everything I love about this band, just kind of out and just disgusted, just chat about them, like this for such a long time. And it just meant a lot to me. I just really appreciate you guys just looking through everything, and I'm very happy you guys have come away with positive thoughts. So
I hope this episode turned out to be what you wanted it to be.
I think it did. I'm sorry it was so long.
It's okay. What is our time right now, by the way?
This is the first ever 3-hour long Soundcheck episode.
I'm so sorry.
I'm pretty sure.
And we still got recommendations, so let's get that done.
We're gonna make them quick, but yeah, let's go. Who wants to go first?
I will start.
Okay.
One more tear-jerking moment was Andrew and I kind of met long before we were at college, because we were at the same Foo Fighters show together. And I discovered this song yesterday because this music video is so crazy. This is off of the Foo Fighters' new album, Medicine at Midnight, which I haven't listened to, and I don't really care to listen to be honest. But I watched this music video. You gotta check it out. It's so trippy and so cool. And it's like the Foos are doing like psychedelic rock. And it's so cool. I wonder if Dave Grohl is back on weed. I'd like to see a report of that. But it's also the first album where Dave is letting the other bandmates contribute. Like Hawkins has contributed throughout the years, but like this is everyone collaborating. Yeah. So this song, "Chasing Birds," is what I'd like to bring on.
Chasing birds to get high. My head is in the clouds, chasing birds to get by. I'm never coming down. My heart is 6 feet underground. The road to hell is paved with good intentions, dark inventions of mine. The road to hell is paved with broken parts, bleeding hearts like mine, chasing birds.
So whatever setup we have for this, I can't hear every aspect of the song. What I did hear from that reminded me of like February Stars from their album cover in The Shape.
Yeah.
Really nice.
That was very nice. I liked that a lot. And I'm like not that I dislike Foo Fighters, but I just have no info at all.
Yeah.
So.
I haven't listened to the whole album either, but the song "No Son of Mine" from that record's also really good too.
Nice.
That was very pretty.
You want to go, Ben?
Yeah, I actually have two because fuck it.
All right. It's already long.
It's already long, exactly. So I have one that I'm going to talk about after this that I've been listening to a lot lately. But we talked about like the California Valley surf punk, skate punk thing. Mm-hmm. And I just wanted to bring in Agent Orange because the first Agent Orange album, Living in Darkness, was one of my favorite punk albums, still is. There are really cool elements of surf music on it. I really like the singing. The singer reminds me of the singer for Bad Religion, somewhat. I don't know why, but it's just good. It's just a really good punk album. I think everyone should seek it out if you like stuff like this, if you like stuff like the early Bad Religion too. So this is The Last Goodbye from that album. Really good drumming on this too.
Someone, somewhere, somehow is going to make you understand. These words will drill into your head. You undergo the process, then you will do anything they say. They will have power over you. You will not question their authority. You know what they can do. shake my head, I don't know what to say. I see my chance to turn and walk away. I will not be a part of this lament. I just can't take that chance because I see my opportunity to shout the last goodbye. The last goodbye.
That's a cool song. And then also more on the sound that I've been gravitating towards recently in my life. And this is another one where, you know, I like to try to tie in my recommendation to the topic. So this song is called Plastic Jesus. But this is Tia Blake. This is just like good 70s singer-songwriter folk stuff. I don't know that much about Tia Blake. I don't think she has that many records. This might be her only one. But this is just a really nice little song, really great acoustic guitar playing. That's basically it. I just like it.
I don't care if it rains or freezes, long as I got my plastic Jesus sitting on the dashboard of my car. Going 90, it ain't scary, cause I got the Virgin Mary sitting on the dashboard of my car. I'm in the backseat singing Jesus, up there grinning, sitting on the dashboard of my car. Green, white, pink or yellow, I don't care, cause he's my fella, sitting on the dashboard of my car.
Yeah, so basically for those of you who missed it, she's having sex in the back seat while Jesus is on her front dashboard. I just think it's a fun contrast thing, and I don't know if it's ironic or satirical or straight up, and I don't really care. So, Andrew, what's your rec?
Well, just as a side note, kind of in the same vein, but not. Do you know the artist Laura Nero?
I think so. The name rings a bell.
Yeah, you should check her out too. She's not really in the bluegrass scene. She's actually, her singing's very much in the soul style, but like her music's kind of folky too. It has this weird mix of folk and soul to it. I've discovered her recently. She's really interesting. I really like her music. So
Okay, cool.
check that out.
I will.
So my recommendation is a special one, as you might imagine. It's my favorite band, and yeah, this artist I've kind of held on for a while because I knew I would one day recommend her on this episode, Bad Religion episode. The artist is named Emily Davis. She's you can find. I've just first discovered her because she used to do. In fact, she still does to this day. She does acoustic covers of Bad Religion songs on YouTube, which I know is the cringiest thing sounding ever, but her covers are actually really good. She's genuinely very talented musically. Her voice is phenomenal, and she really knows, and she's a huge Bad Religion fan too, so she knows how to work those melodies. So
cool.
I've always appreciated her talents because of that. But I kind of last year, I hadn't really looked at her like original work until last year, and I was so angry that I didn't because her original stuff is so good. She has 3 albums under her name, just solo, and they're very acoustic based and a little on the punk side. I wouldn't say that they're like folk punk or anything, but you have twinges of that there, and just super melody driven, and unlike Graffin, who doesn't have the best vocal range, let's be real here, her range is phenomenal, and her voice just soars over that stuff. But I want to play a song from her new group, Emily Davis and the Murder Police. There's one full album she has under that name, as well as a handful of singles, and one that I want to play came out last year. It's called Bloodlines.
Rocks that cut like a razor blade, burning back space from relentless razor.
the voice just builds up from there, and it's just, see, I don't know. Like I can definitely hear how Bad Religion has influenced, and punk in general has influenced her sound, and I don't know. I think she's just so talented and super underrated, and I think everyone should go check her out, even if you're not a Bad Religion fan.
I feel like that's what our recording is going to sound like, Ben, like the acoustic and electric stuff. EP on the way, by the way.
Oh boy,
This is true. We weird plug for our as of yet unnamed band.
Yeah.
We have a few songs we're hoping to record within the month, so we'll see.
And when they say we, I'm not a part of
Yeah,
this.
not Andrew.
Yeah.
I have no
although
musical talent.
if Andrew wants to get featured with some backing vocals, that's open.
I'll do some
Yeah,
I'll do that. How about that?
Yeah, that sounds good.
Soundcheck themes will be on the album.
If you like rock music,
Dude, we should just name our band Andrew Mullen.
Yeah.
Yeah.
please don't do that.
Oh,
Please
never
don't do
mind.
that.
Hey, what did we learn today?
Bad Religion's good. I hope.
Yeah.
Like, what's next week?
You're right. You're right. Just closing note. I'm really gonna have to edit this ending, but next week we are grieved to announce
We've already announced this.
will be the final episode of Andrew Mullen, the death of Andrew Mullen.
I'm dying.
yeah.
I'm sorry.
He is being
He's
executed.
being executed at the end of next week.
And why am I living color next week?
And
Andy
the
Mullins
topic,
executed.
fittingly, is going to be album closers, so songs that close out albums.
Yeah.
Simple as that. We'll have plenty of tearful reminiscences, I'm sure.
Yeah, we should put together a compilation
Yeah,
of
that's what
Andrew's
we were
best
talking
moments.
about.
That's what
Well,
I think
I'll
we're
help
gonna
you
do.
with that. I can handle some of the episodes.
Yeah,
pulling
I
stuff.
have to think about some of them. But I definitely have some moments, just stories to share as well.
Yeah, so we're going to do a little reflection. We're going to play a little music, and it'll be a nice send-off, I think.
Oh,
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
But anyways, now how do we close this out?
Good night, Detroit.
Yeah, hey!
Pew!
I'm a huge fan of Bad Religion. I even bought a brown Fender Precision. Signing to Atlantic was a really bad decision. Now they're back on Epitaph. Hey, I bought Supper, then I bought a Thesaurus. Then Beth and sang on Yes and Merlin's chorus. Now we hang out and party on each other's tour bus 'cause the old band know how to have fun.
All right, well, thank you guys again so much for doing this episode with me.
That was a fun one.
No, I obviously I had a lot of fun.